All right, so I am joined today by Delaney, and I'm sorry, Gillilan. I know it's
Yeah,
like
that's
I
perfect.
should.
That's actually phonetic.
That was actually okay. All
That was
right, I'm
perfect.
glad to hear
Yep.
that. All right, so creator of Datastar, and recently just released Datastar 1.0 after quite a journey. I did see you made a blog post about the journey to 1.0. With Ben Croker. But yeah, so anyway, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah,
Welcome
actually, you
back,
were.
I should say.
That's true. It's been about a year since we. When actually, you were in the whole blog post because I was literally listening to you on the way up to Utah, and going, "What the hell am I
Yeah.
doing? I'm not a JavaScript or web guy at all. What am I doing here? What am I thinking?" So, yeah, you were part of that journey for sure.
Well, that's cool. That's cool to hear. Yeah, I mean that you're so this was the talk at Utah JS, right? Where you
Yeah,
first kind of talked about using your approch and using Datastar.
yeah, because I've been basically doing the data starry kind of thing of saying, hey, spas aren't good enough. I'm doing a bunch of stuff around WebSockets and really pushing what the browser's capable of. Doing mostly C and like GLSL and that kind of thing. And um, the irony is, I was getting more done and going faster just doing raw WebGL, not 3JS or anything, just raw WebGL. That was faster than trying to do stuff in the browser. Like trying to make a form was more work. So I started going down some crazy roads around doing an immediate mode completely thing, basically just doing it all in GL. And then I started getting deeper into the weeds of like, what is hypermedia? What is the world that's around you? And that's kind of where the blending of the things. So when I saw Carson's stuff around HTMX, I was super intrigued, but it just wasn't good enough for what I needed.
Right. So it had kind of some of the hypermedia controls and the overall concept, but didn't really approach it from the same angle that you were sort of looking at it from.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with what Carson wants to get back to the 2000s. He liked the vibe of that, and we, I, and he wants the simplicity. I want the features of the modern web with the simplicity of the 2000s. And some of that's hard to do. Like it's like when people talk about how the great days. Like I did GBA development stuff, and like it's great as a. There's only so much you can do. There's only so many modes. There's only so many pixels. But that's also a very constrained environment. So yeah, you can do some interesting things there, but the you can do more in a bigger like sandbox. So it's not that it's the constraints can be good, but also like browsers are faster, CPUs are faster, everything's better, and things like grid and flex and nesting and CSS, like CS, everything's gotten better. ES6 is a real thing now, so like I want to embrace the things that are good and get rid of the stuff that's bad. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, and that's been a big theme of kind of what I've sort of, I think at the last Big Sky DevCon, the talk by Anthony Alaribe about
Mm-hmm.
here's some bunch of myths that people think about the browser because the last time they tried to do anything with it was in 2010 when maybe these were true. And
Well,
now it's just not true anymore.
it's absolutely 100%. And I think I talked about this last time we talked, is that my big fear was because HTMX was limited in what it could do, they thought hypermedia is limited in what can be done. And that was my only fear, is that there's also another talk at that, because I was there too. It's funny we didn't run into each other, but
Yeah.
the back end and the front end and like trying to meet somewhere in the middle. I think Sam did a talk on that, and it was an interesting talk. And I think Datastar actually does that. Like that's, I know it's my thing, but it's become a bigger thing than me now, which is awesome. Like we actually have a team of people, we have a nonprofit, we have all these things, and now it's bigger than just my initial dream. And I love using it. I use it on the daily. I use dog food it at work all the time. So I'm super
Yeah,
happy
that's the
now.
best.
Yeah, it really is.
Got to
It's
keep your feet in the, keep your foot in the, I don't know, what's the expression? Have some skin in the game or something like
yeah,
that. If
and
you're
I do
using
think
it
that.
yourself.
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference because there's things where people will bring up, and like it's funny, people think that I'm very dogmatic and I'm like, this is the only way to do things. But if someone brings me something like, oh, that's a better way, 100% I embrace it and say, okay, in fact, that just happened. We did the V1 stuff, and then someone was bringing up data style. And I was like, for the dynamic stuff, especially around animation, that does make a lot of sense. We haven't been doing it because we're doing the Tailwind type style thing where everything's classes. And yeah, this makes sense. And we had it in the next day. So like, it's not that we don't embrace change. It's that we're really like, try it our way, because I've been doing this for a long time, and like, my way is really fast, and my way works up to, microsecond timings. So it probably works for your CRUD app. It's kind of the way our approach is. And there's a lot of things where people will rub against Datastar really roughly, because we are opinionated, and we also are trying to hide things from you in the way that, like, we're trying to lead you to the pitch to success. And Datastar supports a ton of things, but we try to not tell you too much about those, because I think they cause you more foot guns. And a lot of that comes around to people recreating spas by accident.
Okay. Well, so what do you mean recreating spas by accident? I'm just kind of curious, because I've heard you say that before, and I didn't quite get what you meant.
Sure. Yeah. Here's a perfect example. One of the things that we now have a pro version of Datastar, and all we do is we take the plugins that we think are foot guns or extra conveniences, and we throw them in pro of, like, look, if you're going to do this stuff, you either A, need to know what you're doing, or B, committed enough to help pay for the nonprofit stuff, right? Like, that's kind of our vibe, is that, like, it's not to gatekeep or anything. It's literally, to some ways, it is a gatekeep of, like, are you sure you need this? So to me, replace URL is a perfect example of that. So a lot of times what people do is they want to, like, hook up their signals so that they have a link on the page, so as they move their signals around, it automatically updates the URL or the parameters of the URL, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Then you're just staving off your state to a local spa. Like, it literally, you just made a spa by accident. And the thing is that you now made a deep link, and now the front end is in charge of something that should have been coming from the back end. Because the thing is, you might need to do validation, do other things, then tell the person to redirect to this URL. Like, there's all kinds of things that you just did by accident. You didn't mean to do it, but people have been upset that we put things like that in pro. And it's like, yeah, we put it there so that you can't just, like, shoot yourself in the foot by accident. And I think there's a lot of things that we're doing that can easily be done wrong. Another example is we're doing some stuff around the text HTML, which I know you're a big fan of, and just supporting that directly. The thing is, we're actually looking at supporting the HTML directly, so that you could technically do the HX boost thing, but I almost want to put that in pro, because, like, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, you're basically creating HX boost, and you're, like, recreating the sins of the SPA again, instead of embracing the MPA and embracing what the hypermedia is about, and embracing that each thing is its own resource. So there's a lot of things where, like, with great power comes great responsibility. And I feel like going forward, that's more of my role of saying, are you sure you need it? Because most of the time you don't.
Yeah. And this is, like, classic low-level tools that give you a lot of power. You're going to have somebody kind of directing, okay, how, what's at least some good way to do this. Of course, you can do a lot of stuff, but we want to give you a little bit more of the easy path. But let me back up for a minute here, because we've talked about Datastar a bunch, but this is Datastar 1.0. So for anybody who hasn't, so what's the I could try to say it, or if you want to kind of give what's the Datastar, what's the concept of Datastar?
Sure. So the thing that I wanted most is I wanted something that was HTML spec compliant, so it would work with any of the low-level things, because I do stuff in C and C++ and embedded and all that. I just want to be able to take standard web stuff and basically sprinkle in reactivity and my own little plugin system. I come from game development, and when you're building engines, everything's modular. You're doing things like NAD component systems and things like that, where everything's very modular at the engine level. And I wanted to be able to be wrong about things. And what I mean by that is that if you don't like almost anything about Datastar, I wanted you to be able to just completely replace it. Because that was my big thing with HTMX and Alpine and stuff, is I couldn't replace anything. Like, there's extensions which you can add to it, but you can't change underlying things. So those two things are basically what Datastar is. Basically, there's a attribute that's built into the spec called data-star attributes. That's where you get Datastar from. And all I'm doing is taking a data-star thing is a key and a value. That's a string and a string. That's it. That's literally all it is. So all I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, we're going to take that. We're going to do some regex and some stuff to turn it into modifiers, turn it into a key, turn it into the... And then there's the other part, which is basically we're using signals at a low level and using the fastest signals out there to basically turn those into reactive expressions, so that as something changes in a signal, it automatically updates the internal state. That's it. So the entire core engine of Datastar is about 300 lines long. The entire signals thing, the entire engine itself is maybe 1,200 lines long, and everything else is a plugin. So there's data-class that interacts with class and sets up all the the details of that. There's style, there's data on, there's all these things that are plugins, and if you didn't like those things, you could literally rip them out and put in your own thing. Even the thing that we're probably best known for is the SSE stuff. It's just a plugin. You could completely rip it out and do your own thing if you chose to. So I wanted to be wrong and for that to be okay. And for you to still be part of the Datastar ecosystem. What we found, though, is that most of the time, most of the people say they want a plugin, and then we go and talk to them and like, oh, this is already built into the browser. You don't need this kind of thing. So I think my original plan for like it's a bazaar and everyone picks kind of like the Unity asset store where everyone kind of just picks and chooses what they need. What we found is there's very few plugins that you need to make the browsers good nowadays. So to me, it's mostly a plugin system and hooking into Datastar attributes. That's it. That's all Datastar is.
Okay, interesting. And so, like you said, it's kind of one of the biggest sort of differentiators so far has been kind of an embrace of SSE.
Yeah.
So what's the sort of driving force for embracing SSE like that?
Sure. I think the thing about server-side events is I did so much with WebSockets and I saw all the issues, especially around cookies and around compression and just keeping things in sync and state tracking between them. That was always a problem, and I did enough of it to feel really like there's got to be another way. And then when I looked at the server-side events, I liked it a lot, but the problem is that it's a text format. So I was like, I'm a binary guy. All my stuff's in protobuf and like lower level things. So I was like, this is not really that great. So I completely ignored it for years and years and years because I thought it was a stream and it was all these extra things. And then once I realized that like, hey, it's actually a superset of anything you can do in a text. It's just a text file that chunks the responses automatically. The irony is most web browser stuff is done over HTTP streaming already. It's just giving you direct access to that. So the thing is that you can start chunking stuff immediately. So you get all the benefits of just sending down some HTML or an AJAX response or JSON, but you can chunk it so that you can do it right when you are looking at your database. So when you go from looking up a row in a database to rendering out to the template can be a single line. And I know Carson talks a lot about locality of behavior, and there's nothing better than one line for locality of behavior. So I'm very much, I've still been pro that. I know that you've had some struggles with seeing that like SSE does not equal streams. It does not mean long-lived connections. It does not mean all that stuff. Just because I like to do it that way doesn't mean you have to. And I think it's one of those things that people get, I have I don't care what the vibe or what's like popular at all. I just sit down and read the specs. Like I'm that, like I'll just read the reference manual. So nothing about the server-side events said anything about streaming, anything about long-lived connections. So it's like, well, if you can support a 0 response or infinite response, I'll take that any day over something that can only support one response. Like,
yeah. So yeah, let me explain my kind of my path with that I was conflating the two, server-sent events and I guess what you would call CQRS, where basically you're leaving a connection open and you have kind of an infinite while loop running on the server, and you can then receive these signals in different ways, and then you have some capacity in your while loop to know that something's changed, and then you send it out on that long-lived connection. So this is what I was considering server-sent events, because in my mind, the server is in that case sending events whenever it wants to. So I conflated the two. And so, my understanding of it now, the server-sent events are just the format that it's returned. You can have a regular request response that opens, closes the connection, sends the server-sent events. The difference between a text HTML in that situation is really just you can send not just text HTML, but also other forms of events in that one request response. And you can keep that connection open so you can do streaming. So, if you wanted to, even if it's just doesn't have to be open forever, but it can be open for as long as you, say, wanted to read from a database and output 100,000 rows. You could output every 100 rows at a time or something like that. Is that kind of, am I in the right place now?
Yeah.
I feel like
you really do get it now. And now you see why, it's funny if we went back to the old interview, you'd be like, you'd see where we were talking past each other because I kept saying like, it has nothing to do with that, but it does, because once you have that power, then to me, why not use that power all the time? Because I know I come from like Go and C and stuff like that. Like I'll build up coroutines or threads and stuff willy-nilly. Like I'll have 40,000 connections on a core and that's fine. I know from a PHP dev's point of view, that's like crazy talk, but that's just the norm for
Right.
me. So I that's where my head is immediately at, is like, I want performance. So I will do the thing that's most performant. And keeping the connections open in modern async terms is almost a zero cost. And because most of your stuff's coming back pressured from the back end, you're now having your RTT. So instead of doing a request and getting a response, doing a request and getting a response, you're just sending down the response. So you're having your RTT. So now all of a sudden it feels snappier immediately. Like you just have your RTT in with no effort. Like to me, that's
Yeah.
a big value.
And this is like what you're describing there would also be called like CQRS, right?
Yeah. So
In
yeah,
that situation.
yeah, 100%. So I'm very much of the, like, whatever view you have on the page, like that is not the state of your application. That is a projection of the current view of the state. And so you can have different projections of the same state. The perfect example that gets used a lot in like the ECS world is that if you have a tree in your front yard, like what that tree means to your landscaper versus your HOA versus the like municipality are all different things. So the tree does have certain properties, but what it means to someone and the granularity of what they care about are completely different. So you can have even down to, I have some places where I do a database per page, where it's a complete database just for that page. And when I'm getting data in, I'm basically creating a database. And the nice part is that means perfect indexes. It means I'm only doing reading and writing on that single mutex. Like I can do some crazy things and I can scale that out. So every page can be its own database in SQLite or DuckDB or any of these kinds of things. So like that's a whole exploration. It has nothing to do with Datastar, but Datastar, like if you spend time on our Discord, you'll see most of the time is spent talking about like how do you scale to like millions of requests a second. And it's like, oh, that's not that hard in this world. Because you get collaboration out of the box, right? Collaboration is just built into Datastar as a natural like thing. It's not a hard thing to do.
Yeah. And this is because you are basically never considering, like you said, the front end is just a projection. You could almost think of it like, you're used to the 3D rendering pipeline, and it's your camera view. You can switch your camera view however you want, but underlying, you have a 3D model with certain properties, and you can view it in different ways.
And you know what? That's actually a perfect thing. Like if you've ever done any 3D stuff, I don't know if you've spent time in that world, but
I have.
Okay, well, people don't realize that when you do like a GL perspective or a frustum thing, you're basically going into view space. You actually don't move your camera around. The entire world and every pixel or every vertex in the world moves around your view. So your view, literally every vertex on the screen is your camera's like warping of that. So this is the same way I think exactly of front end. So you can do a lot of things that are collaborative and sharing. You can do things that are saying, I only want this person to see this part of the view. Like that's exactly how it works. There's a thing in data-oriented programming called mechanical sympathy. And that's like, once you get into game dev, you have to think that way or you can't get stuff done. And so I think that it took someone that's not, I don't consider myself a web dev. And I think that's a good thing because I looked at it from a very different standpoint. Like I started at flame graphs. And it seems like a lot of people in this space just don't care about that stuff. Like they don't care about it. And like, I guess my thing is that it's not that like
Sorry, what is plane graphs?
Flame graphs, like starting
flame
with
graphs, okay.
Seeing how long everything takes to render, every single part of the tree.
Oh, gotcha.
So like, for example, we have our own morphing strategy now. We're not doing idiomorph. It's based off idiomorph, but we kind of have our own thing. And we're like 4 or 5 times faster than idiomorph now. Our signal library is the fastest one that's out there. And it's not that we're like crazy, like, this is a side project I have a regular day job. Like, it's not that we're like great programmers and stuff. It's more that like the baseline of what we should be working on is way up here. And it should be like, we should be thinking in these smaller terms. There's no way that Datastar should be faster, smaller than all these other things. Like it's 10 kilobytes. It's smaller than Alpine or HTMX or any of the other things, and it's the fastest, smallest one. That's weird to me. That's not a flex. It's more of a like, I don't understand the industry right now. I'm very confused.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So Datastar. So that's the kind of big picture of what Datastar is in terms of the web. You just mentioned Alpine and you mentioned HTMX, and I think this is because these are sort of the two primary tools that are maybe, when people are just sort of learning about Datastar or they're building their app, maybe those are the tools that it's for the most part, the functionality from HTMX, the hypermedia controls, the sort of server, server is your state kind of idea. That's in HTMX, but HTMX doesn't have any kind of front end signals, state, etc. So people who are using it are usually using either Alpine, HyperScript, Vanilla JS, etc. So part of this is, Datastar taking on that, having their own signals implementation. Between those tools and then some, I don't know if there's another tool you would add in there, or if those are the sort of the main two that you could.
Well, the thing is that you need a bunch of other tools to make that work. In my opinion, like HTMX doesn't do enough on its own, and Alpine has a completely different idea of what events are, and they clash. They don't get along. They don't know about each other. And the thing is that because of that, because basically Datastar is built much more out of like the equivalent of Technic blocks. Like we kind of skipped Lego and went right to Technic. It's all the gears and lower level things, so we can engineer like actual working machines. Whereas to me, HTMX did a lot of stuff at the Duplo level. And that's not bad. Like it gets you up and running really quickly. But the problem is you start learning, there's a million tags. Like how many tags are there now? There's like 40 or 50 last I looked. And there's so much to learn, whereas our stuff is smaller, but yet only does one thing. Perfect example of that, HXGet. Like very simple, you do an HXGet, you go to give it a URL, you're done. Like that feels great. But the problem is that only does it on mouse click. What if you want on key down, or if you want on some extra thing? Now you have to learn another thing and another thing, where it's in Datastar, it's data on, key down thing, and then the action is a separate piece, and you can take these pieces and do them more composably. So Rich Hickey has this great talk called Simple Made Easy, and I think that building things out of composable things that are easy and simple are valuable, because I don't think HTMX is very simple, because it's doing a lot of complecting of like taking different ideas and trying to munge them into one concept, as opposed to keeping things independent, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm not sure how much you want to get into the HTMX first Datastar. You made a pretty bold claim in the Datastar release about HTMX.
Sure did.
But before we talk about that, so what is in version 1? You posted this kind of journey of Datastar version 1. I know you made a lot of big changes. It was basically a rewrite.
100%, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and you worked on this with Ben Croker, as well as you've mentioned another name, and I think you have another
Johnny
core maintainer.
Stevers,
okay.
I forget his last name.
You know what? Okay, I've seen it.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's a young guy. He's in college right now, and I don't know what kind of crazy stuff I'm gonna have to get up to keep him around, because someone's gonna snatch him up. He's so good. He's so good. I wish I was half as good as he was now, let alone when I was that age. So yeah, he's amazing. So we're very lucky to have him on the team. Yeah, but Ben and I, Ben came from. In fact, I found out about Ben from your podcast on the drive up to. I was listening to all the HX pod things on the way to Utah. That's awesome. That's where I first heard about Ben. And it's funny because on the thing, he actually had his frustrations of where things were at.
He was building a framework on top of HTMX and coming across, things that he would have done differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And also he was one of the major committers to HTMX for years.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, he was a contributor. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We stole him away. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what goes in? So what, the rewrite for version 1? What's different? What did you guys what's the big decisions you made for version 1?
So a lot of it, the thing is, from the outside, it doesn't feel that different. But right. Man, it's a lot different. So the biggest thing is that we went through a bunch of things of basically the way signals worked before is that you have a global store, and then everything, you can basically have a nested object, and then everything at the bottom, the leaves, were signals. And then we did a thing where we basically took your expression. So if you said data on click, foo equals baz plus 2, right? Something like that, like where you do some kind of computation thing. We would actually look at all the things that you did with the signals, find out what the static dependencies are, and actually compile on the fly a version of that was all statically defined with pre-computed functions and all this stuff. We did some really crazy things, basically on the fly, turning things into compiled functions. And that was
what you did before, or
no? This is
now?
So we did kind of a rewrite of the way, because for years I was like, my thing's good enough. I have a data adder and data on click, and you can basically do everything I need to do. But we got into the weeds of like, how can we make this the fastest thing in the world? And so I went heavy down the like, I'm going to static compile everything. Because when you have an expression, it's declarative, which means we can do whatever you want with that expression. Like if it's a function, like JavaScript has to execute. But if it's just a string with like $foo, I can do whatever I want to that thing. I can do all kinds of optimizations and basically do almost like a macro system. So I went really heavy down the line of making it super, super fast. The problem is that people ran into a bunch of issues because they felt like when you have a nested object that's the store, they wanted to like be able to access any part of it. Like if they had an array, they wanted to be able to access it at a top level and then get an array of all the different bits and pieces. And like there was things about it that if you knew what you're doing and you're like a C or a Go guy, it felt like, oh, I can go really fast with this. The problem is it was harder to use than it should have been. So this is where Datastar's evolved a lot in that it's not just my little happy project to make me happy at work. It's like, what is the best thing for everyone else? So Johnny went and made a fully reactive version. So everything is signals all the way down. So basically there's at the store level, it's a nested set of signals, and like the arrays are signals of signals. Like it basically does all this crazy stuff to make it all dynamic and all accessible from anywhere. It's all signals all the way up and down. That was really, really hard to do, and he did it, and it's amazing. So that had a cascade of basically having to rewrite every plugin to go from a very static compiled style to a completely dynamic one, and still make it fast. So we did all that work, and yeah, so basically when you interact with Datastar now and the signals, you can interact with it anywhere in the scoping style, and it'll just magically feel like what you thought it should be. Like the foot guns are basically gone away.
So, okay, when you say everything's a signal, are you talking about, is it just, it's the attributes that have the data dash star, or is it like, are you going into the DOM and turning other things into signals? Is it, or is it, it's just, it's still just the ones that you've determined to get some sort of
the ones you
modification.
Determined. Yeah, it's the ones you determined, but basically before we have basically the equivalent of a nested object that you could put signals inside of like kind of just an object structure. And the thing is, before, only the bottom leaves of that structure were signals, and now literally everything in that structure is a signal. So it's still only the things that you define, but it does make it so much easier to basically merge in and patch and all that. That's the other thing that changed. We had a bunch of things around, like you added signals or you removed signals and all that, and we basically went to the JSON merge patch style, which basically says you can just patch in things, and if it's null, it gets removed, which is how JSON merge patch, the spec works. So we went to the specs. So those changes of basically going to the specs and going from completely static to completely dynamic meant a whole rewrite of everything. And in doing that, we went crazy, and we were at 14.4 during the beta, and then we were at 12.6 for the kind of internal RC to get the SDKs up to snuff, and now we're at 10.3, 10.4. And the thing is, we went from the SDKs, which are, again, are just little helper functions. We went from having 6 to now we have 3, and really only have to implement 2. So our breaking changes were getting smaller and not telling you don't need things, which is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. Well, wait. So when you say you had 6 SDKs down to 3, I thought sort of the are you talking about the same SDKs as like the PHP SDK that I was using?
Meant the functions that you had to, if you were going to be an SDK, you need to implement these 6 functions. So there was
okay.
Like you need to add this, you need to be able to remove, you need to be able to execute script, you need to do that. But we said, hey, what's the execute script if you just include a script tag? Like if you include a script tag, it should execute it. So, okay, well, there's one gone. Hey, like if you need to add and remove signals, okay, well, if you patch, you can do both at the same time. Okay, well, that gets wrong. So we just kind of went through all the steps, and you ended up with patch elements, patch signals, and read signals. That's it. That's all you have to do. And they're just little helpers. So, we had breaking changes, but it was breaking in we just made it simpler, and we removed stuff you don't need. So that's kind of a fun place to be.
Yeah. No, I like that because I do think, one of the risks of any sort of system that requires an SDK is the SDKs, if they're difficult to maintain, who's doing that? Who's doing that work?
Yeah.
Hopefully somebody who cares, but the more difficult it is, the more you've added to their plate. So that sounds like a really good kind of long-term change.
Well, and it was funny because we said, "Hey guys, sorry, but we made breaking changes," and everyone was excited. There was not a single SDK developer that was like upset by that. They're like, "Oh, this got better." And what we found is most of the SDKs, they're actually the funny thing is that the Datastar repo now, because it's just mostly the SDKs and a tiny library, is closures like the biggest part of Datastar's repo now, because they've almost made like a whole little framework on top of this to do all the kind of crazy closure macros and all that stuff. So the irony is that like TypeScript and Datastar are going to be the tiniest parts of the Datastar repo going forward, because people are finding these extra little helpers and nice things to do on top of it. So I see that as the value, is that it's a community building around these ideas. The same way that, like, if you've heard me talk probably ad nauseum before, is that when I was a kind of a SPA developer, I didn't see any value in the web components. Like, I'm already in Svelte or I'm already in Vue. Why would I make this thing that I can share? Doesn't make any sense. Well, but now in the Datastar world, anyone that makes a web component, everyone can share and put it in any of their apps. And now it's a Datastar enabled thing. So like, it's more of a community thing now than the fragmentation that I've seen elsewhere. Like, it's really coming around these ideas of like, this is the best way to do things. And it's not that you can't do these things in other libraries, but you have to try to build up where we are, like, you have to add stuff to what's there, and we're already smaller by like 40% than any of them. So like, I guess the thing is like, what's the point? That's the part I'm kind of at a weird point now, because it's like, what else could we possibly improve?
All right. So, and you mentioned, one of the reasons, there was like, you and Ben were kind of like, all right, version 1 coming soon, a couple days now. And then, as you mentioned, you ended up doing maybe a bigger rewrite than you had in mind. But part of that is you intended to get the API to a point where you don't have to make a lot of changes, right? This is like a big, and also fewer dependencies. Is that also, you guys cut, I guess you cut out idiomorph.
We cut out everything.
Made your own, everything.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we literally have 0 dependencies at all on anything, anywhere. There's no imports of anything. The fetch thing, originally using this Azure fetch thing, there's still bits and pieces of that left, but it's basically just what Datastar. And the thing is, like, for example, people will say, well, you can do this with HTMX. You can't. And the reason why is the SSE stuff doesn't work at all the same. The problem is they use event source, which is kind of the thing that's built into the browser to do this stuff, and it doesn't support all the HTTP verbs, for example, like the get, put, post, patch. It doesn't do that. It doesn't do automatic backoff. It doesn't do the things where when you switch tabs, it automatically stops your stuff, and then when you click back, it automatically reconnects, which you can control. The jittering on exponential backoffs, like retries, all this. Like, there's a bunch of things that are not handled normally that we handle because we see that as a first-class citizen. So yeah, it's just faster and better at this stuff in general.
Right.
So.
And very low level, so you don't have any dependencies. I mean, I know that was kind of a big, the big motion for HTMX was also to take, a project like Intercooler and strip out the dependencies and stuff like that. And it seems like once you get to that level of no dependencies, you're pretty stable, which is nice.
And it's very true, because a lot of times, even the stuff we were doing in Idiomorph, we were living inside their world. Like, there's a bunch of things that they were doing that, like, we already have more information than you. Like, you have to start rebuilding the world every time we call you. Like, you know nothing about the state of the world. We know everything about the state of the world. Like, Datastar knows a lot about what's going on in the browser. So there's a lot of things that they had to recreate the world every time. Okay, we got rid of that. Like, we can do it ourselves. When it comes to the signal stuff, there's a bunch of things that you have to do when you support like alien signals is a thing that we're built from like the core ideas of. And we need the propagation, but a lot of the stuff that they're doing is about being a completely independent thing that can be interfaced in any way from TypeScript and all that. We don't need that. We have expressions. We know what we're doing, so we can simplify things down. So it's more about, that's how we got rid of a lot of the code, is like, if you don't have any dependencies and you build it for your specific situation, you can be really small and fast. And there's no reason why you don't do that. So that's what we did.
Right.
Like, there's not magic here. It's not like we super crazy code golfed. We just looked at what the sizes were and like what changes mattered and what things don't. Some things are very unintuitive. For example, there's places where if you have a lot of the copies of something, you'd think that you want to put it into a new const or something, but it's actually better for compression to have multiple copies of this thing as strings, because it'll automatically compress it anyway, and you're not having to do extra pointers and all that stuff. So like, there's weird things like that that are a little code golfy that was interesting. But again, I'm not a web guy. I don't like. I'm not trying to. It wasn't that we needed to make it the smallest thing, but when we got to a certain size, it's like, but this is how big it should be. Like, why is it bigger than 10K?
Right. And part of that is, like you said, you're doing the flame graph stuff. Like you're checking this as you go, and kind of like making sure that nothing you're adding to it is slowing it down. Do you have like a test suite for that kind of thing? Like a bunch of like throw a bunch of crap at it and see what happens, see how it handles it?
Yeah, we were doing a bunch of that when we were doing in development, but now we got our numbers are so crazy now that I was like, okay, now it's about like what's the ergonomics. Like last we checked, we're 5 times faster or 4 to 5 times faster than Idiomorph, and we were like 10x what like Vue was on their stuff. Now Vue Vapor is coming out, so it'll be a lot closer, and the Alien Signal guy is doing the things there. So we're within shooting distance of any of the major frameworks, and we're orders of magnitude like less complexity to try to do it. So that's good enough for me right now. I will say that I've done some. One thing that it's been really hard for me because I'm very much of the like show me your metrics. I don't care about the vibe thing at all, right? You know, show me your spec. And I got into it a little bit on Twitter, including with Carson, about people saying like none of this stuff matters. Like who cares if something's like. In fact, he was saying that you shouldn't like minify your stuff. And I did a whole website that was like, okay, well, if you don't minify your stuff, which needs Alpine, Idiomorph, and HTMX, it's kind of a standard stack, right? If you want to do like interesting stuff, it's 166 kilobytes, and our version's 10. And it takes this long on 3G, it takes seconds more on 3G, all this stuff, and basically got the response of like, I don't really care, that doesn't really matter to me. It's like, okay, well, I do. So like, it just depends on what you care about and what kind of things you're working on. Like, so we're at that point though now that I don't know why you wouldn't want to build on something that does care about that stuff.
All right. So I mean, so this maybe is the first, an area where I kind of, the actual size of any of these, and like this is, there's like HTMX and there's like Fixie.js, like just those, like Fixie is tiny and it does a lot of the stuff that HTMX does, but in these situations where there's the difference between these some of the different packages sizes, like is that, I don't know, maybe you can tell me more about what you think about that, because like the first time you go to the site, it's going to download it, and like what's that cost for a 30 kilobyte versus a 10 versus 100 kilobytes?
A lot.
If it's only happening on the first time, I guess is my. I'll just let me say a little more about it. My big issue with the SPA world has been, it's not just the download size, which for them in the SPA world, you're talking gigantic a lot of times. You're just like, but it's more than just the code that you're downloading. It's also, because it's keeping your state in the front end, it's also running all that code. Mm-hmm. It's like, whereas the hypermedia stuff, it'll analyze the DOM and then that's it. It's just checking the DOM, making sure, doing stuff. It's not building a second DOM and then doing 10 million things in that second DOM. So to me, that difference is bigger than sort of any of the hypermedia solutions. Just worlds better, worlds different, I should say. Better
Sure.
is subjective.
I mean, there's a Paul Graham blog. I forget what it's, the blurb paradox, I think it is, that basically it's kind of like when you're driving and anyone that's going faster than you is a maniac and anyone that's going slower than you is a Sunday driver and they don't need to know where they need to go. The way I feel is like, you're like, oh, these spa people, they're out of control. There's no reason that things should take that money. And my thing is like, I feel that way about what you're saying because there's things, for example, that you may not be taking into consideration. When TCP first does a connection, there's a slow start pass that basically you only get so many packets down. And you get basically 12 to 14 kilobytes down that you get on that first pass. Guess what fits in that space? Datastar. Guess what doesn't? Any of these other tools you're talking about. So, and the problem is Fixie is HTMX minus, and HTMX already doesn't do enough to make a reactive page. So to me, that's just a non-starter. So my thing is like, if I can have a fully reactive page, even on a TCP slow start, and I can get stuff down, then if I'm dealing with 3G or if I'm dealing with an Iridium satellite with some military application where like things are like not on an embedded device kind of thing, I 100% give me the thing that takes these things into consideration. You may not care about this with the people that you're working with, but I work with people that do care. So like, again, I think it's the blurb paradox or something like that. Paul Graham talks about it. I would have to find it, but that's the thing, is that just because you don't care about it doesn't mean that I don't care, and you shouldn't care, or you should be building on someone's stuff that does care about that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. So the core Datastar is 10K. I generally, and this is probably in the same realm, I don't really have a clear idea in my head of what, for the core Datastar, you've moved some of the stuff to plugins, which extensions, plugins, we use plugins, right?
No, everything is a plug. So core Datastar is, so core Datastar is only like 3K. It's something really tiny.
Okay.
And so everything's a plugin, like data class, data, all the SSE stuff, all that stuff are plugins. But the core, like the thing that we basically deploy as the framework is a set of, I think, like 20 plugins or something like that are there. And there's some ones that we don't include out of the box because I just don't think you need them. So no, everything that you need to build almost any site, and the way that we think that you should be building sites, is all of it together is 10K.
Okay, nice. So like, what sort of stuff doesn't make the cut for plugins?
Yeah, let me look it up. So.
And the reason I'm asking is just like,
no, it's
things that
question.
Datastar can do that you maybe just need to, do a quick check and check the like, known plugins and make sure that this is, available.
Yeah, 100%. So the actions, there's a data animate, which is basically going to be, I'm working on that right now. That's going to be the equivalent of a green sock or an AnimeJS kind of thing. So it's going to be a big chunky guy that does timelines and all kinds of crazy stuff. The thing is, that's a big heavyweight thing. Do most people need that? No, they should be using CSS animations. It's if you're doing low level 3J or like 3D engine or charting stuff, totally valuable. But again, you don't really want that in your thing. There's a thing for adding custom validation to a element, which again is an extra thing. Like you already showed in a video that you don't need that. A lot of the stuff comes down to convenience and like size versus convenience, or like, are you starting into spa land, right? Next one is data on RAF. So request on animation frame. If you're doing a lot of heavy animation stuff, great. Most people don't do that, right? Like they're not building games. Same with, there's a data on resize, a data persist. And again, I think most people go to doing stuff in local and session store way too early. You should be using cookies and building an MPA and using as little of these tools as possible. Like,
so this is another one of those sort of pro kind of like, separate it off because you probably shouldn't be using it, but if you are, you should know what you're doing first.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the kind of thing that's just like that. Same thing with the data query string. That's basically where you're manipulating that with signals. There's a data replace URL because I feel like you're starting to mess with history and all that, and that's really dangerous. I don't think most people should be doing that. Then there's data scroll into view, which people are like, oh, you took away data scroll into view. And it's like data on on load, L.scroll into view. Like that takes care of it. But there's some extra features of like doing it at the beginning of the page, the bottom of the page, just stuff like that. But again, you're adding a bunch of extra modifiers and features that you don't need. And then data view transition, which is literally just setting the CSS selector names for you on the fly. So that's the ones. And then for actions, we don't include clipboard or fit, which basically does linear algebra stuff for animations. And the only event that's different is the upload progress, because that's only available on XHR, and it adds another like almost whole kilobyte to the thing to be able to do upload progress on an XHR event. So again, that's it. Like those are the things that are in the pro thing, and I feel like those are things that most people shouldn't be using. And if they do, it's a support thing. Like people tend to come in and say, "Hey, I'm doing this thing," and I'm like, "Okay, well, you might as well use React for the way you're using it. So please don't."
Right.
So yeah, people got kind of mad about that, but again, it's like this is not. I won't apologize for saying I'm trying to help you more than I'm hurting you. Like if there's a barrier there, I think that's a good thing. And it's not like it's going in my pockets. Like it's a nonprofit. It's set up like we're just stewards of it. There's no like we can't sell out to Vercel or anything like that. Like I still haven't gotten like my stuff, my fees or anything from setting up the nonprofit or any of that stuff out of it. But again, I'm just trying to help make it something sustainable so we can keep Johnny into the monster zeros he's become accustomed to, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so this is like a big part of the version 1 launch, which I wasn't really expecting at all. You guys are working crazy hard on the tech, you're rewriting stuff, you're doing the signals, but you also launched the nonprofit, the idea of a pro and separating those out, and a complete redo of the website, which was really slick. I think this was totally up my alley with this. You got this like kind of fancy space thing going on when you go there, which uses Datastar, signals, right, to kind of animate it. Does that use the extension, or is that the animate plugin, or was that kind of done without that?
Yeah, it's all done without it.
Without it, okay.
It works perfectly fine, so you don't need it. And the thing is, that's just a web component, as you should be doing, right? So, and it's only like 1.2K or something like that. The web component.
It's super cool, yeah. So like I recommend checking that out. I did a little like highlight of it in the last video I did, just because I thought it was, it's a slick kind of thing. And I've done some, sometimes you see this sort of slick, and it's not, I'm not talking like this is something so crazy, but it's stars coming at you, right? A lot of times when you see that kind of stuff, and you go to, let's say like the Apple.com, you're going to buy like a new computer or something like that. They have this really fancy scroll animation or some slick thing, and it's just janky, and it's like, I don't know if this has been your experience too, but like the more they try to make these things slick, a lot of times you just don't get that smooth feeling. So there wasn't any of that. Like, that's my experience with just a little demo like this, is sometimes it's hard to not have that, and whatever the reason is, and this one kind of, it just feels smooth. So I thought that was super cool. Who made that?
I did, yeah. And in fact,
Nice.
Johnny went and optimized it. And it was funny that I actually started doing there'll be a newer version that'll be like a full WebGL thing. I got into some weird projection things where I was like, I want to make it look more wormholey and all that. So like, Ben was like, please, for the love of God, don't work on the Starfield. It's fine right now. So it was a little janky for a couple days, but no, it should be nice and smooth now. But again, that's the kind of thing where, like, embrace the web. Web components are built into the browsers. Like, embrace the idea. Like, it's not like we're trying to get rid of JavaScript. And even the whole fight that started a lot of the Datastar stuff was like, you should be using TypeScript for building out these core underlying engine things. There's a lot of static analysis that can happen and all that. I feel totally vindicated by that. But the thing is, people kept conflicting, like, we should rewrite things in TypeScript to be like, users have to rewrite things in TypeScript, right? Like, most of the time you just need to have a little bit of JavaScript on a page or a web component and you're good to go. Like, don't be afraid of this stuff. And now the Datastar is done, there's a lot of stuff that will be coming in the future. I don't know how much you want to get into, but like Stellar and Rocket and all these other things that are being building on top of it. So now we have a foundation, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah. No, so I definitely want to get into that, because you sort of teased out, like, in addition to the other things that were sort of launched with V1, you mentioned Rocket, Stellar, and there was one more.
Probably Darkstar is the other one.
Darkstar, yes, yeah. That's the one. Yeah, so I guess in order, what's Rocket?
So Rocket is basically our attempt that says, look, web components are amazing. Like, they're really, really good. But there's times where you say, writing web components, you're still you're just dropping into native JS. And there's times when you want to hook into other things. So basically, it's our version of kind of like lit minus, in that we're just hooking up the basic things of, like, you set up props and it automatically hooks them into signals for you and automatically renders out Datastar elements. So you can use Datastar within a web component, because right now you use Datastar to drive web components, but now you'll be able to use it directly in it. And if you have the inspector and other things, you'll see all those things automatically get their own scope and get their own styles and stuff, and then automatically remove their signals when they're done. So it'll allow you to do really interactive stuff in a couple of lines. For example, we took the copy button. That if you go and look at all of our code examples, there's a little copy button that's a little web component, and that's 80 lines right now. That's now becomes 10 lines or maybe less in Rocket. So we have a couple of versions of it, and we've been going back and forth on what the final API is, but it's basically to making web components in Datastar even easier. And once that's done, we can start building headless UI stuff natively that'll be really, really good and a lot smaller. So there's things like base coat and all that, which are great, the shad CN stuff, but they're still, to me, way too big. Like even I forget which one, there's one of them that's like 20K and they're like, look how small we're at 20K. And I'm like, I think you could be a lot smaller. So these are the kinds of things that, again, you may not care about this on that first load, but every little bit matters. And there's people that still use flip phones on 3G kind of thing. So like until that doesn't exist, I'm going to keep trying to push what can be done. And the thing is, because Datastar already gives you so many good primitives, building web components with it, man, it seems like a dream. Just makes it smaller and faster.
Yeah. So let me ask about, that just kind of reminds me that, one of the things about signals is that generally when you're working with them, as my understanding of it is that when you make like a Datastar, at get, at post, whatever, you are generally sending every signal on the page. Is that accurate? Or I don't know if version 1 kind of has gotten into scoping, if it's necessary, if you like to scope, how's that?
So that's also another thing that changed dramatically in V1, is that before it was just anything that was underscore didn't get sent to the server. That was the concept of local version. That was there. Technically it's still there in that now you have a regex for what you whitelist and what you include and exclude from a server request. So now you can actually create a regex that says, hey, everything that starts with an underscore, or I want to do only these 2 signals, or I want to do this, and you can do it on the fly. You can hook those into signals. You can do all kinds of interesting things there. We do have a thing.
You do that along with your request, along with your get or post. You pass.
Yeah. So there's an extra object that's there that you can put in headers. There's also things for filter, and you do include exclude is there, and you can give it a regex. So by default, it includes everything and excludes things that start with a underscore. So it still has the same kind of behavior, but you can make that completely custom. So you can do whatever you want there. In fact, the Datastar Inspector, which is in Pro, it has a full editor that allows you to play with these things, play with your regex, and automatically red, green, know which things are going to get sent to the server. So that kind of stuff is there as well. So it makes it so you can
that's
be really
like a
fast.
Chrome extension that's part of add something to the inspector.
No, you just literally drop it's a web component. So you
it puts on your page.
You just drop it on your page. It goes into the little bottom corner. You open it up. You get to know every single on the pages. You get to know how filters work. You get to see every SSE event, every internal event. All that stuff happens automatically. So you can just drop it on a page and then get rid of it when you go live, and it's amazing. It works really good. I'm really proud of what we've done there.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's Rocket for it's basically making web components easy, making web components great again. So
yeah, and so sort of adding an internal scope to a web component. Plus, I don't know lit, so I'm not sure what the comparison. You said lit minus, but it's basically making it so that you can work with web components in a sort of Datastar approved easier way.
Yeah, it's just a terser, easier version of it. Because the thing is, a lot of the things lit has to do, it has to recreate the whole world because it doesn't, doesn't know anything about the state of the page. Whereas because we have signals, we already know a lot about what's going on. And the thing is, with signals, you're setting up relationships, whereas they have to do things a little more imperatively. We can go and basically have a connected thing, set up these internal relationships of your signals, and then render out. It just becomes a lot easier because we have effects. We have all these things built in. We don't have to recreate the world because we can just rely on Datastar that's already there. So the good thing is that's going to be probably like 0.5 to 1.5K total. So even if it was 1.5K and we added it to the base thing, we're still talking at 12 kilobytes, which is still under that limit of the TCP slow start stuff, which means that it probably will just be part of the native build because I think it's a pretty good feature. So,
yeah, okay. So it's codenamed Rocket right now. It's not necessarily its own product under the name Rocket. It could be, depending on how you.
Yeah, to me, it's just another plugin in the Datastar ecosystem. So. Gotcha.
Okay, so what's Stellar?
So Stellar is my take on. I love a lot of the things. I've loved I started using Tailwind literally the day it got announced on Watham's blog thing. I was watching that and going, damn, that's really smart. That's really good. And what I've done over time, and I think everyone's kind of run into this, is that Tailwind is really, really good, really nice to write, really hard to read and maintain.
I'll just throw one little thing in there. I have to take it out of all my videos because when I'm trying to show something in HTML, if I use Tailwind, which I do use it for my real projects all the time, But if I use it for demos, it's so messy that you cannot tell what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So anyway,
No,
side
that's
note.
and basically what the way I look at it is very much like Tailwind is kind of like HTMX in that it's solving the problem for a time that doesn't exist anymore. Like since that has happened, since Tailwind has existed, we got all the has and not and all the interesting selectors. We've gotten nesting natively. Like CSS has gotten so much better. So Stellar is basically my Tailwind killer, and it's kind of a blend of what Uno CSS and open props and all these other things do of basically getting back to not just utility classes, but building more on variables and all these things that just didn't exist easily a while ago. And so it's basically an editor you configure, you get live uploading and changing of things, and then it basically generates this cacheable set of variables, and you just do regular CSS with them. And by doing semantic and nested styling, you can get things that are smaller than Tailwind and faster. And it's basically a set of things. It's basically falling into the pit of success when it comes to doing that stuff. The actual website is completely done with Stellar. It was using
The current website?
yeah. So it's
Also,
using
Stellar is kind of, I assumed it was sort of a future plan, but there's actually kind of stuff in place already for it.
Yeah, so originally it was actually a web component that was on your page that would take a config file, kind of like a Tailwind config file that's just a JSON thing. And that could be a URL or just like literally JSON in a signal. And it would basically generate all the things that Tailwind would do on the fly in your browser. So basically it would create all those things actively as you were doing stuff. What we found is that there's actually flashes that happen in the browser no matter what in Firefox and a couple other places. So what we're doing is actually taking it, making it a more of a backend thing. We're calling it internally the GitHub issue is SaaS because it's Stellar as a service. And the thing is, because it's now in the backend and embracing the hypermedia stuff, as you make changes, I'm only changing the parts that you're actively changing. So the rest of this giant enormous thing is already cached. So you have all these bits and pieces that are cached, and now you can do imports and automatically generate things, which means that we're actually able to make this unified set that takes microseconds to load and generate on the fly. So there's some really neat things that are going on there, and that'll be like all the stuff will be completely open, and you'll basically be able to point to it from anywhere. And then the editor will probably make part of Pro. So you'll be able to point and let anybody share your things, and then if you want to dabble with it, you make Pro. And one of the things I want to do is still make a web component for a page where, just like the inspector, you can add Stellar to a page, and basically as you play with the editor, it's automatically changing your page if you hook those things up.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time. So what's the API like? Where as a user who doesn't know any of the back end for it, like, am I adding classes? Or am I defining classes in a separate file? Like, I mean, that's CSS, but like, how do I use it?
So for example, let's say you're doing a flex grid thing and you want to set the gap, right? You would have gap and you'd have var -- size equals 1. And that's it. Like you would have it automatically generates these CSS variables. So using the variables.
Where am I putting that? On the actual element as an attribute or in the CSS? Okay.
Yeah,
so you still have a class, whatever whether that's called gap or would you just put the class flex? Like,
so the thing is, I think that the way that the Datastar website is now done, and I think this is far superior in most ways, is that most of the time you don't need classes. You have let's say you have a section. There might be a dollar, like a class at the top level saying, here's my section, or even if it's using semantic tags, you literally call it section. Like section is a tag in HTML. People don't tend to use it. But you do a section, and then you have you have an image that's a hero tag, and then you have something underneath and something underneath. Well, all you would do is do section in your CSS, and then you'd say, like, my image, and you put your image stuff. Because with nesting, a lot of the times where you have all these classes and all these names and all the beam stuff that happened, you don't need it if you have nesting. Like, if you have, like, one class name and then everything underneath it, you just put in the styles you need. It's actually less code than the Tailwind thing of putting a million things on every single line. So you just nest the things. And the interesting thing is the locality of behavior becomes a lot tighter in that you're really only dealing with styling. And the whole thing of, we talked about before with the Zen CSS and how it was kind of a lie. The reason it was a lie is that you didn't have all these nesting and other ideas of like has and not and the query selectors. Those didn't exist at the time. So you couldn't do those kinds of things. Now, the locality of behavior is how am I affecting and styling this thing, which is separate from the semantics of the page. So if you go look at the Datastar website, there's like a couple classes in the entire thing. Like in the entire thing, there's almost no classes because we're just using semantic tags.
Okay, but so what I'm not okay. So you're using semantic tags. What I guess what I'm not getting is why it's not just CSS, because it just sounds like you're describing CSS.
No, it is CSS, but you're basically what we're doing is creating all the variables and creating like fluid widths and doing all the math and stuff, so that when you say I want to start from this size, I want to be at this size, and I want to have automatic generated fluid types that go from here. I have 6 colors, and I have a color for my site, and I automatically want to generate all the different types in the OK lab space, and we want to have this many steps between them, and we want to be able to do hue shifts and stuff, and basically having a UI that generates all these things for you on the fly. So the problem with Tailwind is not like the design system's the part that's actually good, right? But the way that you interact with it and the way that it creates all the stuff is the wrong part. So take the ideas of Stellar's about creating a design system easily that everyone can agree on your team, and then the CSS gets left to be CSS. Like CSS has gotten good. Let's just use CSS for what it's good at. And if you have the right variables, like all the stuff around doing, like, for example, fluid sizing is there. Yeah. There's clamps and all these things, but it's really hard to do correctly. Well, if it's just a variable that has all the crazy math, then you only do it once. Same thing when it comes to like importing fonts. It's a nightmare. Whereas I have JavaScript, I have all these things, so I can make you a thing that automatically embeds on the page and creates and downloads things from Bunny or Google Fonts or anything like that. So you just, in your config, you just basically have a UI that says, I want to pick this font and this font and this font. I want to name it this, this, and this. Done. Like, that's the part that is missing, not CSS itself. I don't want to get rid of CSS. I want to embrace it.
Okay. So you could, it's a design system that sort of primes your CSS, and then you're still writing your page using CSS, but you've used Stellar, maybe at the top, at whatever, in some way to give your CSS additional powers or whatever. Does that sound
and the thing is, you can still do utility classes and all that. Like there might be saying like, Flex and Gap3 and all those kind of, like there's times when that stuff is very valuable and it's easy. But the question is it easy to write now, or is it easy to read and modify later? So that's the thing. Like utility classes is one of those things I keep waffling back and forth about, because I could support all of it. I could support generating all of Tailwind, but doing it in a better way. But my question is, should we? So for example, container queries are amazingly powerful, and yet in Tailwind, they're a nightmare to use. Like it's very confusing because of how, like, the limitations on how you do in block size, and like it's just complicated. Whereas if you just have the CSS, it's very clear what's going on. Like it's a nested structure. You can just look at it. With Tailwind, that's not the case. So basically, it's Tailwind made making good choices a lot easier at the time. Like you can make good choices of saying padding for X or padding XY or padding Y2. Like you could do some smart things and get a good design system. That's the value of it. And I feel like we can get back to that and still have really readable HTML still. We can do both things now. So we should do it.
Nice.
So that's me fixing it. Yeah.
No, I'm looking forward to seeing how that kind of plays out, like how that works. I love to try that out when you guys are releasing it or whatever. Okay, and then the last one was, or the other new thing with a code name, Darkstar.
Well, the funny thing is, it's actually the oldest of all of them.
Okay.
So coming from the stuff I was doing before, I was pushing WebSockets really, really, really hard. And I was trying to do WebRTC and the Python stuff, and there's a lot of issues with WebRTC. And WebTransport is the spec that is kind of fixing both of my major issues with WebRTC and with WebSockets. Like it's a better take. It's basically okay, if we can start over, what does it look like? Kind of like from WebGL stuff to Vulkan. Like it's a huge monumental shift in how you think about the way things work. And part of that is it's using reliable UDP. It has different stream buffers, it has datagrams. It has all these like low-level nerdy things that I'm totally into. Like it's right up my alley. Wait.
So step back though, because
Okay,
we're deep in already. So big picture, what is Darkstar doing? Like which part of the system is it fitting into?
No, that's a great question. I guess because I went too deep too fast. So the thing is, there are times where people will say, yeah, the web is good at X, but you couldn't build a game with it. You couldn't build a first-person shooter. You can't build a real-time reactive thing. And Datastar is as close as you can get, I think, to a real-time reactive thing In fact, people think that's all Datastar is good for. But to me, that's just like,
And
it's not fast
also
enough.
something, not just, I mean, so I would say the front end people say that's what we do, but
That's not what you
to
do.
me, they're doing that just on the front end. What you're talking about is collaborative. You're talking about a
Yes.
bunch of people are affecting the state at the same time. You're not building a little app that just runs on a client. And sure, that one can do whatever it needs to do. But it's like you're talking about a game with hundreds of people playing, all this kind of stuff. Is that?
Well,
Yeah.
and the thing is that that's the part that I think people get really wrong, and where SPA has such a weird vibe, is that what makes the web great is the hypermedia and the collaboration and the interacting with other people. Otherwise, you just have like a wiki like a markdown file. Like there's value to that, but like most of the stuff that's interesting is collaborative. And I think that's where Web 4.0 really is going to be, is in that collaborative style. And the thing is, the web's really, really good at that, but there's some things it's not good at. And it's just not built with that stuff in mind. So the way that games, like whenever you have a problem and you're like, how do I solve this and make it efficient? Go see what web people do. Or sorry, what game people do.
What game people do, yeah.
Yeah, not what web people do.
I was
What
like,
web
wait a
people do
minute.
is the opposite of that. Sorry, yeah. But the thing is that there's been the way that you have this stuff, like you have fighting games where people can play across the world with each other, a fighting game, which is super twitchy, right?
It's wild,
Like,
right?
no, it's not wild. It's a solvable problem. It's not magic. So the way that works is a thing called net code with rollback. And what you're doing is you basically have to have a deterministic thing on each side, and then you're basically you're guessing what the person's going to do next. And if you get an input from the person saying, "Hey, this happened 30 milliseconds ago," and it's not what you predicted, then you actually go back to the beginning of the known state, and you basically replay that with the new information, and then you morph between those things. So that's the basic gist of it. The thing is that it's a completely different way of writing code. It's a completely different thing. So it's not just you drop this in and you magically get Darkstar. But if you build your app in a way that is deterministic, that has basically prediction built in, and you have something that's like a chess thing that says, I know that if someone gives me this input, a pure function that gives me this output. If you build your app in that way, I can make it so that you can do full real-time first-person shooter, fully collaborative, fully things, and make it super efficient and make it really a new version of the web in a way. That it can do things. You could do a first-person shooter 100%, no problem, in the web with Darkstar, 100%. So that's a different style of thing than a standard web page and forums and all that. Like it's a different style, and it's something that I was interested in from the very beginning, but Web Transport, the spec wasn't there. There's still a bunch of things around HTTP3 and the reference thing. So it's kind of a nerdy thing in my opinion, and most people don't realize how fast Darkstar or Datastar is. Most people do not need Darkstar. It's more the kinds of military application and stuff that's my background that I'm interested in. But so I think that's a really interesting space forward, because then it's basically using the web as a really interesting sandbox from a security standpoint for doing that kind of stuff. But that's more for the super, if you want to get down to the really low level datagram stuff. It's great. So
Yeah. So I mean, does the setup that you're describing for that, would you call that event sourcing? Is this sort of a similar kind of, so my understanding of event sourcing, and I don't use it much, but it has this appeal to me. You build even just, let's say, a regular website. The concept would be everything that happens is an action of some sort, an event. And somewhere in your system, you have a huge event log, and it's all in order such that, let's say your whole database was wiped. You could go in and just look at that event log and recreate everything. That's the dream. I don't how many people have actually accomplished this, but that's sort of when you talk about these real-time games, I would say that they have to be doing something like that, right? Keeping a time-stamped log of every single event, and then they make their own predictions, and if something's wrong, they go back to their official log and make it right. So is that something is that part of what you're talking about, or is that just one implementation?
That's definitely part of it. All this kind of ties together. The reason why I started working on Datastar in the first place is I was actually building out a event sourcing collaborative database. That's literally what I was working on. And I was trying to build a UI for that. And it's really complicated to build a UI for that kind of thing of having bitemporal, being able to take any point in time and fork it and go off and do other things and try things out and then predict back and all that. So that's literally what caused Datastar to exist in the first place. So yes,
and not a game.
100%.
This was like a real world
like,
application of that need. Yep.
Yeah. So my thing is once you get the brainworm that is event sourcing and CQRS and all that, it kind of becomes the hammer that solves a lot of these problems. And the reason why is because if you go to any industry that's older than 100 years old, everything is event sourced. Every medical record you get, every accounting thing, like every military, like all this stuff is not basically they have their own set of logs of what they expect to happen. That's why you have to fill out forms multiple times when you go to different medical record places, because they have their own event logs of things that they are stepping through, and they don't care what the other person says. Like, this is their source of truth, and you have bounded contexts and all this. Like, once you start seeing it, you'll realize that like that's the only way that you don't lose information. That's just the way like physics works as far as we know, and it's just taken a long time for programmers and stuff to realize that like they're throwing away a lot of data. And if you don't want to throw away data, you have to do events. Event sourcing is the only thing that makes, by definition, it's almost a axiom that you can't, if you're losing information, if you don't want to lose information, you are doing a form of event sourcing. And like real-time game thing that's protective netcode, yeah. But the thing is, you just are truncating your logs as soon as you get to a known state. That's it. It's just a truncated event source. Most things that work in a pure functional way have to be event sourced in some way or another. So making that easy and making it something, event sourcing is hard to get right. And that's why I was working on a database to make that a lot easier for people, because they don't have to think about it. But it's like everything becomes event sourcing at the end of the day if you don't lose data.
Yeah. And I'll put in a plug here for anybody who wants to, I'm sure there's really some great event sourcing stuff out there. But the thing that made it clicked for me, Daniel Colborn, who's in the Laravel world, has built a package called Verbs. I don't know if it's live yet or what. It's relatively new, but he made a presentation at Laracon where they built a game using event sourcing. Live on stage, he deletes the database for the game that everybody's actively playing, and then uses his event-sourced thing to rebuild it with fixing a bug or something like that, because they intentionally programmed a bug in, and then because they had the core actions that every single player had taken in the game, they were able to regenerate the database, and fix the bug retroactively. So it was a very impressive kind of conceptual introduction to event sourcing for me.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of these kind of things that are not interesting to me anymore, because like that's the way it should be. Is that you should be able to delete the database and just do it. It's kind of like there's a demo that one of our community members made a little while ago. There's a well-known thing called a million checkboxes, and he's talking about how
it's Anders, right?
Yeah, so there was a thing before Anders' thing that was basically a million checkboxes. There's a whole blog thing of like how he basically was costing him. Like he couldn't keep the site up because it was costing him too much money and all these kinds of things, right? And it was too much infrastructure to run, and the network costs were too high. And one of the guys in our community made a billion checkboxes that was on the top of Hacker News, and it was on a $15 server, and it ran fine, and he didn't have any overages or anything like that. So you might be like, how do you do this? And we can get into a thing about compression and like the things that Datastar does that you don't realize, like the fact that HTML is so much faster to use than JSON, which is a weird thing, doesn't feel right. Same thing, like we can get like 2,000 to 1 compression ratios. Like these are things that sound like magic to people, and yet we actively show them examples of this stuff, and then they kind of disengage. Like I've had some interesting conversations with developers of SPA frameworks and like people that are well known in the community, and as soon as you start showing them numbers and things and saying, no, like this actually works, hypermedia is really powerful, they just stop talking to you. It's been an interesting thing in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me, and I wouldn't have realized the difference either of just the browser like is optimized for HTML so well. It handles it. It knows how to deal with the DOM. Like that's what they've been working on it for 40 years now. Like, just iterating, making it work with HTML, and then all this stuff that's added on top of it. That's people go to slow websites and like it's not the HTML, like that's not the problem. That's my little thing on it.
Yeah, but it's weird that like that's the one thing that I will say now that Datastar is done is that trying to get past the vibes and trying to get past the like the assumptions. Like as soon as you show someone like, hey, this isn't what you think it is, it's hard for them to actually engage with it. That's been the weird part is that I'll like actively go with stuff and look at metrics and then people just like walk away. Which is weird because I just think like, what's the best tool? Like to me, I don't care if there's a better tool than this, I would use it. Like that'd be great, but there isn't, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let me like first of all, I think you guys added the support for text HTML into Datastar, which just from my perspective, I like that because everybody's website right now, I'm not gonna say everybody obviously, but let's say like 95% of the people who are not using JSON are returning HTML in some capacity, whatever your app is, you're used to working with HTML. So to me, that's a nice bridge into Datastar. If you're not comfortable with the SSE, with the event stream, having the ability to use the text HTML and kind of get used to that concept of, what the HTMX world would call like an HX swap OOB all around the page. So you're just working in that back-end state and pushing out HTML in a way that they don't right now. They don't have to do anything. If they're already using a text HTML, they don't have to do anything special to make that work. So to me, that's a step towards more people understanding it, more people embracing it, at least to get started. Just my personal opinion. But I do think, so I think there's someone in particular that I've seen you kind of go back and forth with quite a bit on Twitter, who is a front-end developer. And I feel like they, I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but, or if there's someone that's
There's
obvious
a couple
here.
of them, but I'm
There's
guessing
a couple, yeah.
There's Adam. I think would be my guess.
Yeah. So that's probably who I mean. So, and I just, I made a comment at one point watching you guys sort of get into it. I think he would love Datastar. Like,
Me
honestly,
too.
like I just like, this is something like I can see why he would not be into HTMX.
100%.
But I think that the reasons that someone like him, and I shouldn't speak for him, but the reasons that a lot of people get into SPAs, the reason I started getting into SPAs, I tried to, is because it gives you this a certain way of doing things. It gives you an ability that you didn't have before. And so you go deep into it, you figure out, okay, and then you eventually come across the limitations and you come across some of the stuff that you never heard about before. That's like, now this is maybe not worth the effort. But I think that mentality that gets people into SPAs, like I think that could bring people into SSE and into Datastar.
Yeah, I forget the guy's last name. He now follows me, which is funny. But yeah, he basically was like, I thought like Datastar was just a smaller, like less feature-proof version of HTMX because it's a lot smaller. It's like, no, it does all these things, and he's like, yeah, maybe I need to check it out. So like, there are times a lot of times when I get into those things, because if you ever notice, I never clap someone or like start anything, but I'll happily hit back. Because I have the numbers to back me up, which is great. Because like it's okay to have like a difference of opinions, but when you have actual numbers on your side, like I feel if you see me go after something, it's because I know I have the numbers to back myself up. But I won't start anything, but I'll certainly finish it. And that's one of those weird situations where you have someone that actively like wants to engage and like says, okay, I'll fight back, and like says, I'll give it a try. I have no problem with that. It's the people that literally say something or lie or say like, you said you would do something you didn't, and then like don't actually like back it up when it comes time to deploy something. Like I've had multiple times where people say like the billion checkbox thing. Someone's like, oh, I vibe coded something up and here's the code. It's like, yeah, but put it in production. Let's see what it looks like. And then they never respond back ever. And you like tag them on it and say, hey, are you ever going to do this? And they'd never respond. So that's been the weird thing, is that I have no problem being confrontational, because I guess I come from like the graybeards of like, hey, you want to be better. You want to be like good at what you do. And in a former life, I was an athlete and I had Russian coaches and all this stuff. And it was very much a like, you want to be in this world, you better be good. Like that, you're here to be good. And so I want to be better. If I'm wrong, man, that's great. So there's a perfect example of that is it Howard Shue? Or basically the guy who did Alien Signals. Maybe getting his name wrong. But he came in and I said, hey, we're like 40x faster off these benchmarks. Like, we're getting crazy numbers with the static version of, like, the static version of what we're doing. He came in and said, I think your numbers are whack. And we got into it, and come to find out we were not doing something in our benchmarks correctly, because again, we're not like JavaScript people. We're like, we took your thing and we did it, and we were basically, our thing skipped a step because we didn't have to do it, and his version did. But the interaction with that, we actually made Alien Signals faster, and then we made our stuff faster on top of that. So, like, if I'm wrong, great. Like, show me I'm wrong. I will happily, like, learn from it and, like, eat humble pie and say, hey, great. Like, this is not my bag. Like, come be better. So I'm happy to get involved with people and be wrong, but it's not happening. And that's a weird feeling, because I don't feel like I know that much about this stuff to be, like, I don't want to be a JavaScript framework guy for sure. I want to just get back to doing, like, GLSL and stuff.
Yeah. So so you have a very different, let's say, like, just contrasting with, the other hypermedia library, very different approach as a maintainer of the project. And it seems to me that the competitive, the fact, like, that has driven for you. I mean, Datastar has, if there wasn't people kind of like saying you can't do this, I don't know. Do you feel like that is driving you, or is it kind of like you could take it or leave it?
No, my thing is I want to do my, if I'm going to spend time on something, I want to have the best version if I can, especially if it's something foundational like this. When you're building a game engine, you want to make sure that when you're building your game or this interesting, clever mechanic or something like that, that the engine is not where your bottleneck is. Like, that's a bad feeling, because you're doing interesting things on top of it. You're doing higher order concepts, and those are expensive. Like doing scripting on top of something, like in Lua or something, you're paying a cost there to be able to iterate quickly, right? So my thing is that we have differences of opinion, and this has been the way for literally years, in that I really care about performance and I care about low-level things in a way that other maintainers just do not. You can just tell in the way they do things that they do not care about the same things I care about. And my thing is, if I'm going to build a foundation that I expect other people to build on, it's my responsibility to give the best version of that possible within my means and within my team's means, and to care about it. If you don't care about it, I don't want to build on your stuff. Like, simple as that. Like, it's not about, like, what's convenient for me. The whole thing around, like, minification, not minification, and it's a better thing for the end user if you have minification and you have source maps. So you have a full tree of everything that's going on. You know everything's happening. You can debug and breakpoint into anywhere else. That's a better thing for everyone else. So, like, the thing is, sometimes when people talk about good vibes or like, hey, it doesn't really matter, to me that's a bad vibe, because that means now it's my responsibility to worry about these things instead of one person caring about it. And I, like, that is a difference of mentality, and it's not about competing. It's more that, like, I think everyone should take more responsibility for the code they write and be, like, proud of what they've done. Like, if you look at the code of us and any other, like, go look at Alpine or HTMX, or look at our code and see what you think. Like, I will put it up against anything. So that's not so much competing. It's like, if you're going to play a game, which is what we're doing, like, it's all open source. Like, don't you want to be good at the game? If you're playing basketball with someone, you don't want to, like, give up and be like, whatever. Like, so I don't know if that's competitiveness or if that's just, like, taking it seriously. So I take it seriously.
Yeah. Okay. So let me, we mentioned you did make a claim, basically you would consider HTMX deprecated. And I'll just first off say I don't see HTMX and Datastar as competitors exactly in the same space. And that's just, my personal take on it. So why do you feel like HTMX is deprecated?
Sure. So we are smaller, which is a big benefit, because again, you're under the TCP load thing. And I think if they could get smaller, they would. And Fixie was a whole, like, if we take out a bunch of things, we can make it smaller. It's like, yeah, okay, but you're taking out a bunch of things. So first of all, we are smaller. We are actually simpler to learn. There's less to learn in Datastar. Even with the reactive stuff and all that, there's less tags, there's less things that you have to learn to get a page up and running. we are faster. So we're not just smaller, we're faster by quite a bit. We already include morphing. We already include all these things. And there's nothing, it's not like you would just do a direct port, but there's literally nothing you couldn't do in Datastar that you can do in HTMX, but the opposite is just not true. And you can take things out too. You can take Datastar and say, hey, I only want just the reactivity, and now you have a 3.9K thing. Like you can learn as you choose and add the things, and there's nothing that you can't do in the other. So it's built like HTMX is done. They've said it's done. Like there's nothing else happening there. So there's no new innovation. If all of a sudden we came up with a new plugin system or a new way to do transport and all that, you're going to get that day one as soon as it's available. HTMX, it's deprecated because it doesn't. We do everything they do, and we do more, and we're smaller and faster. What else could you want? Like,
all right. So are you ready for
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know. Do you want my pushback on that?
Happy to. Like you don't scare me.
Okay. So I think that you are, everything you said is correct. There's no sort of that to me. My experiments with Datastar is you can do, I mean, maybe not everything. I won't quite say everything, but most of what there are things like, I don't know, the replace URL stuff or whatever. HTMX has kind of a system for handling history, and there's kind of a lot of these extra attributes that, if that is part of it. And then, I think Andrew Ryan was talking about a situation which seems crazy, but he doesn't control the back end code. He's just getting the HTML and has to manipulate that, and HTMX is so. And so, I think realistically there are differences, right?
Well, there's definitely differences, and the thing is the Ryan thing. I push back on that hard because he says, "Hey, I don't control my back end," which means you're not doing hypermedia. Then, like, I'm sorry, you're just not. Like, you're using it. Like, then if you don't control the back end, then you're using HTMX as a SPA. That's what you're doing. Like by definition, you don't control the back end. You're using it to just like move things in. So I think that's very silly. But I was happy to put money on the line and say, hey, I will like make a bet towards charity that I can take a WooCommerce thing and make a WordPress plugin that does exactly what you need to do. Like, I don't believe him is basically what I'm saying, is that he came up with this crazy idea that says the farthest they could go is say, I don't control my backend. Like, then you're not I don't take it seriously because you're in a Turing complete language. You have PHP. I don't believe you. Is basically my line.
So let me. So I'll say my kind of I think that what he's talking about is HX select. So and this I think points to the bigger differences. So the reason in my mind HTMX is not going anywhere, and also not deprecated. Is it's a different API. Like you are working in a different place, for you and for Datastar and for, anybody who's using Datastar, your primary code is coming from your backend, most likely a controller, but it could be, it could be the templating engine also, depending on how you're kind of putting it forward. But when you're using HTMX, the API is putting your controls more on the front end, right? So when you write your declarative, your get HX get, you're setting your HX target right there a lot of times in the same place that you're doing your HX get. So both things can accomplish the same thing because HTMX can take something that it gets and put it somewhere. If you're working from the back end, you can generate something and put it somewhere as well. The difference is, the Datastar would just say, at get or whatever, and you wouldn't know from that point where that's going to go, right? You'd see it in the response. So just the fact that the API is different is going to make a preference thing. Like, where do you want to be controlling your stuff from? And I think this is where the Andrew Ryan's example comes in. He's not controlling what's in that response. And that seems, that is an unusual situation, but it's not actually that. This is where some of the demos that I've been doing where you're getting just like a big HTML thing, and you can sort of, it's from a WordPress perspective, which I can't stand working in WordPress for many reasons. But you don't have a ton of control over what happens in the back end of WordPress. It's a little bit of a nightmare. So I think there are those kind of situations where your preference is to work declaratively, to make your decision at the point of your HX get or whatever, rather than make your decision in the back end. Does that kind of make sense?
It makes sense what you're saying, but I will say that in my opinion, you are completely negating the entire hypermedia systems book by saying that, in that the whole point of that book, especially before it becomes an HTMX tutorial, is saying that these controls come from the backend. All source of truth comes from the backend in regards to these kinds of things. That's what the book and that's what hypermedia is, and REST and all this is about, is this keeping state in the right place, and the state is in the backend. I think the fact that HTMX leaks all this data into your templates is just like the Tailwind thing of it's a leaky abstraction. It does it that way because they don't have the ability to change things on the fly. The backend is where state lives, and if the state changes, it doesn't matter what the front end polling speed is. The backend is really the one that should be in charge. It should be the one giving back pressure, saying, "Hey, new things have happened. Hey, things have updated." That's where the state lives, and to have that leak into the front end is you're right. There's a design difference, and like I think they're 100% wrong. Like they're just wrong, and that you are taking the best parts of what hypermedia is, and you're now having a leaky abstraction about when to select on and how often to pull. All these things are like not up to the user. They should not be up to the user.
Well, wait. So, I mean, the way that the HTMX example is, what you're doing is you're giving the user the hypermedia controls that they need. And so you're still deciding from the back end what's possible. But the difference is, in the moment, you give the user, here's the things that, and just as I think conceptually they're not that different, but in a practical way, when you're programming, you can sort of, the ability to make those decisions in your, on your div right there, and put things where you want to, versus doing that in the controller. To me, that's a preference thing, because you are deciding, where do I want to spend my time programming? So some people will like to program directly in the HTML, directly in the, templating language or whatever. And some people will sort of prefer to program directly in the back end, right?
I mean, I personally think that that's extremely myopic. And the reason why is because the situation that's going to change in your back end is where the actual state lives. And what I mean by that, let's say you have something where you're saying, I'm polling every 5 seconds. Well, what if you all of a sudden have Black Friday stuff going on and you cannot support that? Like your template has to wait that 5 seconds. Or if you're all of a sudden saying, hey, something new happened where we got a bogey on the screen, or we got something that has to happen within this amount of time, you can't update that person. They're sitting there waiting for you. Like, whereas with the SSE style and all that, we push, the server decides when pushes happen. Like saying that it's a convenience, that it just feels good to put in your template, but that's not where the state lives. You might as well be doing a spa at that point. Like the data's in the wrong place. To me, saying that I like to put it in my template is the same as saying, well, I just like dealing with JSON instead of HTML. It's the same mentality, and I think it's wrong. It's okay to, right, I agree that there's a difference here, and I agree HTMX is not going away, but I think you're so close to like the spa mentality of like a leaky abstraction that I don't think most people realize that that's what they're doing.
So, I mean, my issue with the spa is that it's like a virtual DOM. That's the big thing for me, is like you're duplicating your state. I don't think of having the sort of hypermedia controls as duplicating the state. I think it's you're putting, and Datastar does the same thing. It puts controls that the user needs where it needs them, right?
Mm-hmm. But it does also things like polling, which you shouldn't be doing. The polling is putting it in the user's hands when they shouldn't be in their hands. They shouldn't decide how often they get to get updated.
Well, but I mean, Datastar is not, unless you're doing the CQRS, it's not like it's constantly sending stuff, right? I mean, you can set it up like that, but just for the general like get and request, I mean, you could do polling with Datastar too. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't, there's no need to. if you're going to set up like a long-standing connection or something like that. But by default, it's like, so this is one of the reasons why, I'll say I had a framework a long time ago, just my own thing that I built for some job that was way overcomplicated for its use, and the main thing was I wanted to write only in PHP. I didn't want to ever go to any JavaScript. I didn't want to go to HTML even. It's like, sounds kind of crazy, but I think that's almost what Livewire has kind of done as well. But one of the things that I did was make it so I could send to anywhere on the page, and that works, and it's fine. This is, I think, what Datastar has done as well. And one of the issues that I had with it was finding looking at the HTML page and sort of knowing which things are doing what. So you'd have like, something that triggers. So you have an HX on at get or something like that. You don't necessarily, you can't, looking at that code, you have to go look at the backend code to get an idea, right, of what that get is going to do, because it could affect anywhere on the page. And this is, the HX swap OOB does the same thing. If you're using HX swap OOB, you have to think a little bit about, okay, from here, what is being affected, right? Because you don't know. And so that's the same, this is, to me, this is just a preference thing. Do I want to know ahead of time, or do I want my backend only to decide?
Yeah, I mean, the backend's still deciding, but you're basically cutting it off at the legs. It's still decided to create that template with those specific puts in place, but now you've locked it into place where you can't change it. And that's where I think it all is coming from the backend. That's the dirty secret, is that your template is coming from the backend. So you're not getting rid of having backend code. That's just not happening.
You're making your backend code dumber in a way, right?
I think it's actually, you're putting more state inside your template, which is crazy to me, in that instead of being able to say, I want to interval at this rate depending on what's going on in the backend, and be able to send something and just do you're listening to an event bus and just rendering it directly, you're now putting it in your templates and you don't have any control over that. That to me is way more complicated. I will say that any of the things that I've seen you do with HTMX versus the Datastar stuff, every time you're deleting code in the Datastar way, every single time. So if you have less code on the page, you have less bugs, and if you have less bugs, you have simpler things, and then all your state's coming from your controllers. That's simpler. That's the part I don't understand, is now you're doing stuff partially in HTML and partially in the backend, where it's we're doing it where you don't do that. It's less, every time you've done something, you've deleted code. And that's usually what everyone's run into. I've never seen anyone that has to do extra code to make Datastar work. That's why I think that's where I'm tending to disagree, just because the reality is that you're having to write more code to do it your way, and it's less efficient, and you have less control over things. That seems that's a weird place for me to be, in that you're well, I like it, but I have less control and I have more code to write. That's a weird vibe.
Well, so you have different control, right? So, let's just, I'm going to use this example of a very simple HX get some content, right? So we have, content, we'll just say .html. That's maybe too static, but we've got some content coming in. And then we have an HX target, and then we have an HX swap, let's say after end, so and our HX target is some table, and we're adding a row to the table. So we're just, whatever, you've created something new, and you've going to add to the table. So the HTMX version of that is a get, a target, and a swap. And you can see that on your button, right? The Datastar version of that is a get, right? Or, data on click or whatever the, we didn't mention trigger, but let's just say there's no trigger. It's a click by default.
Yeah, there's no trigger. No.
So the Datastar version of that would be just at get equals content.
Yep.
And so the issue with that is that when you're looking at it, and this is, like I said, this is not a technical issue. Both of these solutions get you to the exact same place. What I'm trying to get across is there is a functional API difference between these two things, and the way that the way that you think about them and the way that you want to control. So with the Datastar version, it just says @get equals /content, right?
Yep.
So you would then need to go into your content file and figure out what that's doing, right? So
yeah,
on your front end, yeah.
Yeah, so to make sure that we keep it like example for example, yes, but you already have a controller in the back end to have a target to hit. Like you already have a place to write code. So now you're writing it in the language of your choice, and all your code is in the language of your choice, as opposed to having this extra language that's not an HTML spec compliant thing. It's not like it's this extra thing that you're learning inside your templates each time. You learn less. You just do stuff that's HTML spec compliant, and then you spend all your time in the language you like. Like I like Go, I like Zig and Odin, all these things. Like I can spend time in the language that I prefer. Why would I not do that? And it's going to be faster.
100% agree. 100% agree. What I'm saying is the reason HTMX is not going anywhere, and the reason that is that HTML is that language that those people want to spend their time in, right? So
I guess it's just that it's not HTML though. They're not writing HTML.
But I mean, no, it's not but it's HTML extended, right? So it's like you can set your controls. You can treat HTML as if that is the language, right? So you can decide where your target goes. You can decide where your swap goes. You can do all that with Datastar, no question. So to me, this is when I talk to people about Datastar, about HTMX and stuff like that. My general thing has been, if you want to spend your time writing JavaScript, then use React, use Vue, those kind of things. Like just spend your time in the framework world. If you want to spend your time using, doing whatever language that you want to do on the back end, like I would heavily recommend Datastar for that, because that's where you're going to put almost all of your logic. The front end templating is incidental. You do decide, but like even in @get, it doesn't really matter which div you put it on, right? I mean, maybe it does now, maybe there's some scoping, but like
no, because I mean it's about what you're doing with that element. Like, are you hovering on it? Like, it has to do with the interactiveness of it, not with like the call that you're making. They're independent things, right? So
so if you do like a data on load, it really doesn't matter where in there you're putting it. With HTMX, you are spending more time in the HTML layer. So if you enjoy spending time in the HTML layer, then I think it's a good choice. And that's also why it's, that can make it a niche choice, because even though HTML is it's everywhere, it's the backbone for everything, it's not really thought of as a programming language exactly. And it doesn't do loops. Unless if you're using a good templating language, then, I use Blade and Laravel. But to me, that's how I sort of talk about it. So, I mean, to other people.
You make valid points in that if you like the vibe of it, it's a different vibe, and you can do that. I will say though, however, I almost did it for April this year for April Fools. I almost did every single HTMX thing, like every tag as a bundle, because you can 100% do it in Datastar. You can do everything. Like there's actually a data
like you could do like data-target if you wanted to.
Yeah, data-target, data-select, data-vars or vals. You can do 100%. You can do all of these in Datastar, 100%. You know why?
Yeah.
Because I literally started with that first. Like that's how I did. I literally did a port over because it's more about the TypeScript stuff and like making it plugin based. So what I would say is, if that's really the vibe you want to go for, and it really matters to you, and you're a company that says, "Hey, I like this vibe, but I want to have things be fast and efficient," then come talk to us. We can make that happen. We could make all of HTMX in Datastar 100%. Like that's a non-issue.
Yeah.
The question
I mean, like
is,
I said,
that still makes it a deprecated thing, in my opinion.
I mean, sorry, let me just fix my camera here. There we go. I mean, like I said, like I still don't see them as kind of competitive things because I think of the APIs as very different. I think of them as like, and I would say I would push back on vibes also, because to me, it is about that. Like the way that I use a tool that's the tool. It's like, this is what I'm building as an API. Like, this is what you've built with Datastar is an API that does these things. You've thought about all the different parts. You've thought about how the developer is going to interact with it. And I think that's, that is also what's going to keep all these tools, not just HTMX, but there's a ton of these, and even like the React and Vue. It's like they might be ultimately doing the same thing. We have React server components, and like it's like, okay, they're also dealing with server state now, and they're doing this, but it's like the way that you come into it, the way that the developer interacts with it, that API, that's the creator's vision, and I think there's something there for everybody.
So I guess the way I would say is that I think there's Datastar, the core engine, which is like the 3 kilobyte thing, right? Like that's the actual library. HTMX talks a lot about being a library, not a framework. Datastar is both a library and a framework because there's the core engine, which is like 3 kilobytes, and then there's our release that's like, here's all the plugins we think you need, which is the 10 kilobytes. What I'm saying is that Datastar, the library, is 100% completely like blows the other stuff out of the water. And the reason why is because you can make a Datastar HTMX version. Like you can make a version that is everything that is in HTMX, and it would probably be smaller than the current version that's out there and still have things like signals and all these other things. So to me, that just shows that if it already can do that kind of thing, I could do that thing today. I don't think that's the right way to build things, but you could. That just means that the others deprecate it. Like it's not that it's bad. It's just that like we've come up with a way that we can support everything that does, and even the same API. That tells me that like one is deprecated compared to the other. Now, if you like the feel of that style of doing it all in the like having 40 or 50 tags to have to learn, you can 100% do it today. I just will not be the one doing that because I think that's a bad idea. But at the same time, there's nothing stopping you from doing that today.
And I would not recommend that anyone do that, including myself or you. And it's like I'll just like so that's my pushback on the HTMX. Sure. I really do believe in the API and the way that we interact with it. But my thoughts, just playing with Datastar, using Datastar, I tried to build kind of a pretty fancy demo with it and got into some compression stuff that I just don't feel great about yet. So I never ended up kind of putting that out there. But my feeling with the SSE in general and what sort of you guys are building. Like I would also just put HTMX in the rearview mirror. And I think you guys have already sort of talked about that, because the people that are going to be your target market are people like SPAs have had their moment, right? They were like, first we had MPAs, we had these kind of like Rails, Laravel, web. I don't know if that's 2.0 or 1.0. Maybe that's 1.0 or something. But all these frameworks that kind of did cool stuff. That was like a big deal in 2010. And me and you were old enough to know the different phases that have gone through.
Oh, yeah.
SPAs came in, completely took over, at some point, became the sort of hot thing and all this kind of stuff. And I don't think SSE has ever had its moment, right? Like there isn't a time where people really understood it. And I don't think that it's, I've had my own difficulties kind of wrapping my head around it because I haven't used it and I've been programming for, 25, 30 years. And it's like, okay, 20 years maybe. But it's like, I just haven't needed it in my opinion, but having experimented with it, having messed with it, I just feel like there's a world where SSE has its time. And where people kind of start to realize some of the stuff that you can do. And I think the people who are going to embrace it are the people who are currently embracing SPAs, because their SPAs were the cutting edge. And you could think of them as the cutting edge maybe still. I think some of them are getting a little bit stale. They're sort of realizing some of the drawbacks a little more. Yeah. That's just my impression of the development world, the stuff I see. Even people who are deep into SPAs are kind of like, well, maybe React needs a rethink a little bit. So right. I think SSE has potential. And the Datastar, the fact that you guys are going deep on this and thinking about all these things and building your version of the API, and sort of making these things possible. I think you guys are thinking big, and I was just really impressed with the Datastar 1.0 launch on that. You brought in a lot of other stuff. And you mentioned all these things for the future.
Yeah, and just so people are clear, I have nothing wrong. Like, I think that HTMX is a really good library. Like I want to make sure that people don't think that like I'm just knocking it. It's more that it's served its purpose in getting us farther down the line. Like it opened up a lot of doors and it opened up a lot of the things. And it's not that I see it as a competition against it. It's more that it's not the library's issue. It's that people are using it as a framework. And I think that's my kind of thing. It's like it's kind of like the whole React thing of like it's a library. No, it's a framework. Like it changes the entire way you think about how you build things.
Yeah.
To me, that is a framework already. It's just an incomplete framework, and that's totally fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong. Like it matches the needs of Carson. Like that's great. Like it matches their needs, and if it matches your needs, don't just say I want to use Datastar because it's the new hotness. Like the thing is, the problem with Datastar is it's still hypermedia, but to really use it well, it's a complete rethink. And even in your latest video, I was like, hey, you could do this in a different way. You don't have to do CRSF or CSRF that way. Like, but it's a conversation as opposed to just like, here's how you port stuff to the new hotness. I definitely don't want that to be the thing. I just want people to say hypermedia is a future. And the reason why we get the HTMX back and forth is because I think they're closer than the SPA guys are. Like, even though I'm talking about real time and all this stuff, I think the hypermedia is the right approach, and the SPA people are way off in left field. And if you're going to do that kind of stuff that's basically a native app, then you better be doing the net rollback code. You better do deterministic stuff. You better be doing all these things if you're going to do that style. And none of them are doing that. So I have a long road ahead of me to show people that, but I'm having a hard enough time showing people things that work today. So I don't know. I'm not the best diplomat, but I'm definitely there to help. So,
yeah, well, I mean, just, I've been on the Discord, the Datastar Discord, and you are on there, you're helping people. I think you get into it with people and argue stuff on Twitter and stuff like that, where you feel it's appropriate and all this kind of thing, but you're not, your goal has been to teach people Datastar and the ideas behind it. So, just if anybody is kind of exploring this, like definitely check out the Discord because, Delaney's on there helping, Ben is on there helping. Like,
yeah, we have people in shifts basically. Yeah, we have a lot of people that care. And that's the thing is that it like, we have no problem like fighting it out like a family. Like, hey, like we're here, we all care about, we all want everyone to succeed. And it's not just like do it my way or not, or like, I'm mad at you. It's more like, I know my way works, and until you show me your way works, like I'm going to keep doing it this way. So, but the good thing is we have the numbers on our side and we are there to help you, and we want to see the web be a better place. That's why we went the whole nonprofit way. We didn't want to make people like, we're stewards of the project. We literally have a mission that we have to abide by, or we lose that nonprofit status and all that stuff. Like while everything else is getting bought out by Vercel and some other thing, or like spending time making merch, we're trying to make a better framework for everybody. So like, it's just a difference of there's just differences in opinion there. And I think that's okay. Like we're trying something different. Yeah. No one else has done this before. So we don't know if it'll succeed or not.
Well, this is what I'm bullish on Datastar big time, because I think to have something like this succeed, if you have a half-assed SSE, if that's the one that gets into gets its moment, and it sucks, then that's the moment's over. And that's not what Datastar is. I do think if people take a look at it, for some people, the event stream setup, learning what that is and going deep on it, it's going to change the way they build, the way you build websites completely. So I just think, I think you guys are doing it the right way. And the kind of stuff, I don't know who built the website. You built the star thing. Did you do most of the website too? Yeah,
like the thing has been started helping fill out the documents and stuff, but I was basically dogfooding Stellar while doing it and saying, okay, Ben did not want to make a new website. And I'm like, no, this is a good time. Now's the time. So no, I did the artwork on the site, and I did the new little pixel art thing. So I have more to do. I have more pixel art to draw, but
it's fun. It's fun.
It is fun. And that's the thing. It's like, I think people think that just because I am hard nosed on things when I know, like I have metrics to back me up. And that's kind of a different style than what's become normal. Like there's Casey Moritori is kind of the only person I know in the kind of well-known web space or like in the like YouTube space or anything like that that's like willing to push back on people and say, no, this is what the like ASM looks like. Like you should know what it looks like too. At least be able to read it. You don't have to be able to write it. I think there's a desire and a need to go back to that style of like people wanting to be like understanding what's actually happening under the hood. And there's a need for that in a way that like there's the DHHs of the world and the Casey that are like have very strong opinions, but I want there to be better and more opinions in Datastar. Like it's still kind of me out there like talking about it, but I can't wait for the day when like no one even remembers who I kind of like in the Rust world, almost no one knows anything about the guy who actually made it because he just kind of went off and did other things. I can't wait until that day goes and like you don't even remember you talked to me. You're talking to the cool slick guy in front. So we need more of that.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. All right. Well, I don't know. I mean, is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to talk about with V1, the Datastar launch?
No, I feel like we're in a really good place, and the only thing I can say going forward is I don't know what the future will hold for being a foundational thing because the problem is Datastar has gotten more powerful, and you could 100% do the SPA-y things again. And I don't know how I feel about that going forward. Like,
Too
for
many
example,
people using signals for things they shouldn't
like,
be using them.
Signals are amazing, but you should sprinkle them in like sprinkles. Like a donut made of sprinkles is a bad donut, right? Right? Like they're beautiful, they're amazing.
Never heard that, but I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like you just want a little bit of them on top, and they're great. Like if it's too many, you just eat carnauba wax. Like it's just a bad time. And this is another thing that I say in that blog thing I did is I have people that I know that are very much streamers and podcasters and stuff, and one of them says like you get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar, and like they're right. Like my way of doing things is very different, but also the way I look at it is the analogy I have there is that like I'm trying to clean a house and putting honey all over the place isn't going to get me anywhere. So like a little bit of vinegar when you know that you have things backing you up is a thing. I don't know if it's going to be successful. Like, I've done basically everything wrong in how to get people to like and influence people. And yet we have like over 2,000 stars. We have like 1,400 people in the or 1,200 people in the Discord. Like people care and they're still sticking around. So that in some way is good because the only people that are there are the people that really care about what they're doing. Otherwise, they're not there for the meme. Like there's not a lot of memes. There's not a lot of like going against the big guys. Big guys don't know who I am, let alone like anyone else. But if you want to beat those guys, like it's a secret weapon right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. In that I loved React, like 0.4 or 0.6. It was a great library, and then it all kind of went off the rails. So the weird thing is I kind of don't want to see Datastar succeed too much in that I like what it is and like it's very opinionated right now and you're falling into the pit of success. Like your Hello World. You did a Hello World and you recreated Wave, Google Wave. That is not a Hello World in most worlds, right? Like that was you just like, I'm going to keep playing with it until it breaks. And you made Google Wave.
Right.
That to me is a good feeling that people can make great things really quickly. Like doing an agentic AI UI thing. That's like a Hello World in Datastar, right? Like that's just a non-issue to build something like that. So I'm fearful. I don't know what you think about that style. Cause like, what if all of a sudden it got big? Like, I don't know, like as soon as you get a Fireship or a Prime or someone talking about it, I'm kind of fearful of that day because I have a day job. I can kind of see this on the side. I have a Discord while I'm doing regular work. I don't know what that looks like because I don't want to be known as a framework author and like go to conferences and talk about like my feelings for the future, stuff like that. Like that's just not the vibe I want to go for. I want to build cool stuff. I don't know how you like, where do you go from there? Like, I don't know if you have any thoughts about it, but I don't know what to do if it succeeds. Like it's already succeeded in my mind. Like I'm ready to work on new things.
I mean, I just think you've set it up so that it's maintainable. So like no matter what else happens, like almost like the popularity, like if you had built yourself a Rube Goldberg machine of dependencies and all these other things, like that would be hell if it ever got picked up and you had companies like banging down your door like, this doesn't work, how come I can't do like that to me. So to me, the focus that you guys have had, the care that you've put into it, kind of sets up a little bit of a buttress against the worst case scenario of right now, if a lot of people are using it, maybe you need to increase your VPS or whatever for your, however you're serving it or something like that. Who knows? But like the tech part of it, I just think you guys have treated it as if a million people were using it. Mm-hmm. That's been the mentality. And so I think that on that level, and then, you've put some of the groundwork in of setting up a foundation and getting help. If you were doing this all alone, you'd probably be like just completely insane by now, or just would have given up. I mean, I think Ben is a really steady hand who's just he seems like a great person to work with. Just from the few times I've talked to him, and then you have some other people. Steve, I think you said. Was it Stevens? Stevens?
Johnny, yeah.
Johnny,
the thing
okay.
is, I will say for people out there, like open source is hard, man. Open source is unpaid. No one like cares about your feelings kind of thing. But I will say that out of this, I found some really solid people and really like people that really care. And it's made it all worthwhile in a way that's shocking to me in that I can trust people. Like it's so nice to be like, yeah, like if you think that's the way to go, then let's go. I don't even look at the PR. Like it's having that kind of comfort with certain people's choices is great. And I was so wrong in that, like when I first did my talk and did all that, my thing was good. Like it was solid. It was still the best thing at the time, but it is so much better and so much easier to use. And so like having that collaboration, no matter how good you are, or how much of a vision you have, it's so much better when people push you and disagree with you and being okay with that. I think that's something that's missing a lot in that, like, argue with me all day long. In fact, a lot of people will say that I'm very hard-nosed in that, like, I don't take any of their ideas or anything like that. And it's like, no, you got to have a better idea, or you got to be something I've already like haven't discounted things. So happy to take ideas, but it has been an amazing journey to see it become bigger than me. And that's great. I want to go like walk off into the desert Fallout style at the end of the game and just like walk off and go off Dune Messiah style. That's my hope. And we're getting closer and closer. Like there's more and more stuff that I just don't touch. Like Johnny completely rewrote all the morph stuff. I don't even know some of the stuff how it's working at this point. Like he's very clever. Yeah. And that's good. Like embracing the fact that it's not about me, it's not about my feelings, has been really good for the project. Like the text HTML thing, like it was interesting when the million or the billion checkbox thing, which by the way, there's a trillion version out that we haven't put up because people won't even do the billion one. So we already have a trillion running.
Trillion. I can't quite even picture what that's. Anyway.
Yeah. In fact, there's the one thing Andrew's working on now. I'm helping a little bit with. He's doing most of the work. Is a fully zoomable version, so you can scroll in and out, and you can see a map that's just the checkboxes. And how to do that
with a trillion, like statistically, you'd probably never find another checkbox.
Yeah. You know, actually, what I wanted to do. Tell me that this isn't like the smartest, dumbest thing ever. I wanted to do make it basic. So basically, every checkbox is a penny. And then, like, if you want to unclick and click on it again and make it something your checkbox, the whatever color thing you want, then it's 2 pennies. And then I see
what you're saying. Like, it costs a penny to do the click.
And then that just funds Datastar forever because it literally just because the people in the top left, that becomes really expensive real estate. And then everywhere else, you start to find things, and like you can find little patches that it would cost you almost nothing to make images for your advertising and all that, but then someone could overwrite it with something else, or you could do whatever you want. It'd be pretty. It's an interesting way to do funding for an open source project. I just thought it was kind of a neat
that is interesting
idea. But there's some neat ideas out there. The thing is that it's all possible. It's crazy that like the part that I don't know, maybe Wade, I would like to have people listening, or if anyone has better ideas, but I'm willing to talk to anybody about this stuff. But it's weird to me that we like the million checkbox thing got a ton of coverage and all that stuff, and we do a billion. If you're like, yeah, that's cool, and it's like 400 lines, and then it goes off of Hacker News, like, okay, but this is better than like do this in any other application and see how it would run, and it would fall over. It's weird to not get like that's the part of the whole making it popular. I don't know what you would have to do to do that. Like we're already doing the cool stuff. Like
Yeah, and I'm not the person to have that answer. I'll just say, I'm doing my own thing. I have my little business where I work with a couple clients, and this kind of big scale marketing interest, all this kind of thing. It's just I'm not the person to know the answer to that either. But I do know, my sense of let's say you take something, and I'll just use HTMX because we've talked about it before. I think he's known for memes and stuff like that, but I don't think that would have worked without the educational side of it, the essays that go along with everything, and the book that kind of provides this kind of backbone. And so I think I think Datastar has had similar success. I think because of that, like you guys also, besides the kind of when you work on the cool demos, those get picked up or they don't. That just feels like such a crapshoot to me. But I think building up that store of conceptual things, the talk, the Utah JS, even the conversation we had where you kind of introduced the concept to me. That still, I check the views on that. Like people are watching that, people are learning about that kind of stuff. So I think having that background of here's why SSE matters, here's the benefit, not just SSE, but just this whole concept. The more you sort of do that, I think that increases your chance of one of those things will hit or they won't eventually. But having that background, I think, really helps.
Yeah, also if any listeners are better at this stuff, like this is an area that I'm not good at, right? Like I'll read specs, but like trying to, and also the thing is there's a weird line in between those things where if it gets too successful, then I would have less time to work on the things that are interesting. Like I actually am working on stellar stuff and I'm doing regular dog fooding at work and all this stuff. Like I don't need to add more to my plate, but at the same time, I want to help people that are in the spa place because I do think that's our main, not competition, but it's the people that we need to reach out to that say hypermedia is the way forward and y'all been lied to. Like getting that word out without coming off as like I know more than you. I don't know how to do that. It's hard because I was in their spot, right? Like I was in their spot and I'm trying to like get them out of there.
Yeah. I don't know the answer either, but
okay.
So I've been thinking a little bit about it too, in terms of, how much to kind of, so like, for instance, is it useful to have here's how to do something in React. Here's how to do the same thing in Datastar. Is that maybe, I think you have a lot of examples that sort of start from the HTMX world and here's how to do what you're used to in HTMX. Now in Datastar. Maybe that's not so much on the new website. That was sort of a focus on the old website.
Yeah.
I think changing that mentality to be here's how you do something in React, here's how you do something in Vue, here's what that same thing looks like in Datastar. Right. This is just, I really don't know if that works. I don't know if I've thought about that in terms of an angle for doing videos and stuff like that because there are a lot of people coming from the front end kind of spa mentality and which I used to be part of.
So the one thing that's good, I agree with that. And part of that is there's, I've been kind of waiting until now that Datastar is solidified, I've been doing stuff with Rocket because then I've been working on a Trellix demo, which is kind of Ryan Florence's go-to, like, look, I'll look at your thing if it's a Trellix demo because that's what he built. And the one thing that's been interesting is that I have to build it like 3 times in that I can build it verbatim to be the way he would do it in React. And to, like, basically because he's doing optimistic updates, which I think are lying to your user. You're telling people that there's a state that doesn't exist. So I'm literally naming things like I'm lying to the user is the name of the function that does does the update to the signal and then does the post and does all that. I don't like that style. So I have to build it his way. So it's 1-to-1. And then I need to build it with actual indicators and doing all that stuff. And then I need to build it the Datastar way. So I actually have to build it like 3 times to make it useful. And the problem is like, okay, then I just I'm now the thing I can see for his perspective is basically no one knows who I am. So if he completely says like this is an idiotic thing, nothing, all he's going to do is be stepping down on somebody, But if I show him like this is faster and smaller and better, it's nothing but a downside for him. So I don't know, even if I do that thing where I do it his way, and then in between, like more of an MPA style way, and then do it the Datastar way, I don't know what that would be. Like, is that worth the effort? And that's kind of that's the line that I'm kind of running, spending time on that versus just like making Rocket and Stellar for people that are actually using Datastar, like just make people that are using Datastar's lives better or getting more people under the tent. That's been kind of a weird place for me to be in now that Datastar's done, is that like what's important.
Yeah. So maybe I would say if you do that kind of stuff, and I tweeted about the futility of making demos for people in the past because I've spent a lot of time. I did a couple demos, and you throw them up there, and it's like, it's the same thing like you just said. There's no benefit to them, to the person who demanded or requested the demo, to look into it, to do that much, unless they're receptive about something. Right. So I think Ryan Florence, again, I think this is a target market, is the Ryan Florences, the Adam Rakis, I don't remember a lot of the names, but I think these people are gettable in terms of just the tech. I think so. I wouldn't necessarily waste your time too much on a demo unless you feel like that demo can live forever on the Datastar site and be useful for people. Yeah. Maybe that's a way to kind of justify, doing something. Because if you just make a demo for one person and give it to them, and then it gets maybe like 3 views, and then life moves on, it's depressing, And I don't recommend it to hardly anybody. But if you're making demos and you're tackling real problems and you are able to keep that around almost like an essay, I've started to build out a demo site on the Hype CP. So every video I do becomes a demo, and I don't know what's going to come of those, but I'm going to leave them up there so that if people want to see them, they can. So maybe that's a way to kind of make that a little less depressing.
Well, and here's the thing, like, it's fine to tell me I'm wrong, because I'm totally fine with being wrong. Like, what do you want to see out of Datastar going forward, or out of the team in general? Like, do you want me to be nicer on Twitter, or like, because I feel like, or like, do you want to see other features, or like, what do you want to see out of the Datastar project? Like, what? Because for you, you'll probably stick with what you got, and that's cool. But like, what do you see is the way forward to get people on hypermedia, I guess?
Yeah. So I don't know. This is this is why I was kind of asking, like, do you feel like that kind of competitive, the ability to, like, whether on Twitter or not, like, you've argued with people in a way that, if that is driving your innovation in some way, I mean, I don't want to say maybe that's too extreme, but like, if that fires you up and makes you want to make the package better, make the documentation better, make the onboarding process better, I think Theo was going to try it out and he couldn't get it set up. And like, I get where he's coming from on that a little bit, because the first time I tried to set up data, I was not thinking in terms of SSE. You had no text HTML support. Sending back an event stream, having programmed for 20 years and never done it before, it's a hurdle. And so I think on getting the onboarding process. So if these kind of arguments, I can't say, because you have to be you, and like, there's different ways to grow your tool. And I think you can be you and grow your tool, and especially if those kind of arguments are making you make the tool better.
I mean, the thing is that it only becomes an argument because people like aren't being genuine. Like, for example, the Theo thing was a great example, and as you can tell if you go to our website, my favorite quote on our site is like, he thinks it's a shit framework. But what's funny is I basically said, hey, you have your examples. Mine's written in Go, so it's going to be faster and all this stuff, and it's smaller. It's the smallest one by far. I basically had his example, and I said, hey, here's the code, here's the Docker file, here's all the stuff you need. What do you need from me? And then he never responded back. And then he said I was making fun of him, and I was doing he said that straight up lies. Like, he just lied straight out, and then he didn't engage afterwards. So, like, you basically get called out for, like, hey, you lied. Like, just admit you lied, and like, let's go and actually solve, like, let's look at these numbers. And you just disengage and you stop talking. So, like, I'm not going to back down from someone that is actively lying and won't back up their claims. Like, that's just not my personality, I guess. Like that's not a good time for anybody if you're just lying. Like just stop lying.
Right.
I recommend that to anybody.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms like, I wouldn't change your approach. Maybe there's a different. So the one thing that I will say is I think it's worth taking into account, and this is just coming from me because this was my part of my discussion today, is that I think leaving some gray area for preferences in APIs, because that's just never going to change. Because at some point, there are metrics that you can use to say better or not better. I do think for some people, they are going to have a preference for forever using the virtual DOM. Like some people are just never, that's the way they learn to program. That's what makes sense. They want their client side. They want their back end to be like essentially, someone else is going to do that. Like I'll hire a service for auth. I'll get a service for databases. I'll get a service, it's just, I don't want to think about that. And like, I don't think it's not my favorite way to program, but like for some people, it's whether or not it's better or worse doesn't really matter, because that's the way that they want to interact. They want to write JavaScript. They want to do this. So I think leaving that so that if you argue, just keeping that in mind, so that if that's what they want, then it's like, okay, obviously if all you care about is that, then like there's nothing to discuss here, kind of. But I think.
Oh no, I was going to say you're absolutely right. And see, this is where I like my spicy take is maybe not as spicy as you realize, in that I say HTMX is deprecated, but I think if you like progressive enhancement, I don't care about that. I think it's like the CSS Zen garden. I think it's a big lie. Like if you're going to do progressive enhancement and not do JavaScript and all that, I think AlpineJS is actually a better set of tools to. Like it's really built around progressive enhancement. I think AlpineJS is great. If you care about progressive enhancement, you need to do that or unpoly. I think those are really solid tools if that's the thing you care about, because I don't care about that. And you're 100% right. I didn't build any of the tools to make that happen, because making a JavaScript framework that supports not having JavaScript, I think is just active utility. But there's people that have embraced that, like Ian over at the AlpineJS, 100%. I think that's an amazing tool. So I may sound spicy, but it's because if you're doing the kinds of things that people are doing with HTMX, I do think those kinds of things, it's deprecated. But the whole idea of there's other ideas, like unpoly is a completely different take, is that if you like that, the sprawl that it is very opinionated on everything, it may fit your needs, and hey, man, do it, go for it. But things like Turbo, I think we take Turbo and Stimulus and put them out to the shed. Like,
is this the Hotwire Turbo? Is this the
all that stuff? Like, we're just a better, smaller, faster version that works on everywhere, including Ruby. So, like, I just think that there's certain things where we've solved this problem. Like, I don't think Livewire makes a lot of sense. I don't think Hotwire makes a lot of sense. I think trying to keep state correct in all these different languages, I think we've solved that. So, it doesn't mean that we can solve all the problems, but I do think that you can have something like in AlpineJS that was written in Datastar, ironically. Like, you could do a form thing that does the exact same thing as AlpineJS, but you just won't see it from me, right? Anybody else could write that. So
yeah. So maybe just the next focus could be on just on onboarding for people, and I don't think it's that difficult right now. But I think that having sort of a different approach for different people coming from different backgrounds, maybe is is part of it.
Yeah, the coming from the spa world to here, you're right. It's almost like you have to take a website and completely make a video series that's completely undoing all the wrongs of it and starting over. And it may be a situation where when I do the Trellix thing, literally I need to make a video series that is going, okay, just like the original Trellix was actually a set of 14 videos or something like that where they're just knocking through them. I needed to do 3 different series that's starting from scratch and saying, okay, we're going to match it 1-to-1. Here's what it looks like. And then start doing metrics and background. I mean, that might be a viable thing to show people, but I guess the question is, what do we get out of that? Getting spa people, if you need to be convinced that bad that spa is rough, Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to convince Ryan Florence that like Remix is a bad idea. Like, that's just not going to happen.
No, but even Remix is not what it is, not as front end. My understanding of it is, I think I'm trying to remember. Maybe they just didn't.
I mean,
use React.
Remix
Maybe
3 is moving to Preact and all that. So it's not just React. Like, they are making, I will say, if you're going to go down that route, they're making smart choices. They're trying to make things better. They're trying to make they're trying to go at it a different approach. And the one thing I will say that was an interesting, because I went back and forth with Ryan Florence a bit about the Trellix and all this, and like what would be a good example of Datastar. And the weird thing to me is he was like, okay, well, this is, like you have to build the thing that's super fast and all that. Where basically when you add new things to a Trellix board, it automatically like updates the thing below it and all that. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can totally do that in Datastar. That's fine.
Yeah.
But the thing that I was like, but that to me does not count. Like, you have to make a version that's collaborative where you have people interacting with the same board at the same time. And he's like, yeah, I don't care about that at all. And it's like, gee, that's a kind of an issue. He's like, you can do that if you want, but I don't care about it. It's like, okay, well, I can 100% do that version, but also the collaborative thing is actually what makes the web interesting. And that's the part you don't care about, but that's the part also that's going to make you look bad. How do you deal with that situation then? Because it's like, but collaboration is the part that makes Trello boards in general a good thing. Like, you don't make a Trello board for yourself. Like, that's just not a thing.
And I think the Ryan Florences of the world are, again, I think they're ripe for something new. And I think SSE could be that. It's like, this is something, and I'm not meaning it pejorative as like the new hotness. It's like a legitimate technology that hasn't had a true moment, in my opinion. And like, you see little bits of it now. When ChatGPT first came out, and it's writing as it goes. Like, everybody was like, wow, that's neat. Like, how does it do that? It's like, right, that was just basic SSE, right? I mean, maybe they didn't even use, I assume they did. But it's like, it's so mainstream now in a way that sort of slow stream as you go wasn't before, as far as I know. I don't remember seeing that everywhere. So maybe the AI chat bot world is helping to kind of push. People are in the back of their minds. Little things are brewing. Like, Laravel just released an SSE package. This was like 2 months ago or something. So, Laravel's been around for 15 years.
Yeah.
Now they're just kind of releasing it. So I do think there's moves happening. And I think you guys are in the right place to get the Ryan Florences of the world to look at it. And the tech is there. Like, so that's, like I said, I'm bullish. I can't direct you in terms of promotional stuff. I'm not the guy to do that. I don't have a single open source package out on the internet. You guys have put out your actual code. People can go look at it. They can try it. They can use it in their sites. So it's impressive. And, I think you guys are doing the right thing. I think you guys are doing this the right way. So.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks to the rest of the team and stuff and the community. Like, it's all people trying to make it better. Like, I love that it's not about me anymore. Like, that's great. It's really good news. So hopefully that continues and you forget my name. So.
Yep. All right. Well, if anybody's still watching, I think we're at almost the 2.5 hour mark. So I'm going to turn this into a Lex Friedman type situation here.
Yeah.
But I love it. That's what I'm here for. So yeah, I don't know. Anything else you want to throw out there? Are you going to be at Big Sky DevCon this year?
No, my talk got denied, and I just couldn't justify going again just to go hang out. But it'll be interesting to see what talks beat it out, because I was going to talk about basically from a hello world to trillions of things, and so all while doing hypermedia. So it'll be interesting to see what talks beat it out, and I'll look forward to watching it online.
Nice.
But yeah, no, I'm not going to go. And also I realized that I missed the Utah JS cutoff a while ago. So no, I'm just going to be making Stellar and doing Rocket and doing the stuff that I know how to do. So
nice.
Less talky, more doey.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm guessing you're going. I don't even know when it's coming up here pretty soon.
Yeah, it's like a couple weeks away. I've got some friends in Montana. I'm going to be, I'm lucky to be able to make a little double trip, visit them, and hit up the conference.
It's a beautiful country. So, yeah, I'm actually from Wyoming, so just on the other side of the mountains. So, I'm from up like between Sheridan Base and that area. So, yeah, beautiful country. Love it up there. People, make sure to wear sunscreen because it gets you don't realize.
They're not fucking around about the big sky part. Like,
no, they aren't. Like it hits you hard. So no, have fun. Say hi to everybody. Like the HTMX team. I hope Carson does well. In fact, Carson's the only person that has a Datastar T-shirt. I made a T-shirt, but the problem is the rocket, the asterisk looked like too much like a butthole. So I was like, well, I can't make any more of these. So Carson has the butthole Datastar shirt. There's only 2 of them in the world, so I was almost gonna wear it today because it's like the worst. But you know what's funny is it looks like I was like, oh, this looks too much like a butthole, and yet like every AI LLM company, it just looks like a bunch of buttholes. Like I don't know if you've seen all the like things. It's pretty funny. So
yeah.
Luckily,
I've done it's a butthole moment right now.
It is a butthole moment, and the thing is, even the Datastar, in fact, the new little pixel art rocket that I drew, someone was like, "That looks like a butthole." I'm like, "If an X looks like a butthole, then you got a deeper thing going on there." It's pretty funny. So, yeah, no, I would say anyone that's listening, like, I try it out and see, like, but try it with a new, fresh take. I will say that's one thing that I've run into is that people think it's just a port or a smaller version or something like that, and it is a completely different take, and that's a hard thing to grasp because you already did the thing if you're going from a spa and saying, oh, I'm going to embrace this hypermedia. Okay, I've learned hypermedia. I know how to do hypermedia. I read the hypermedia systems book. I know how to do it. And then you have some Yahoo going, yeah, you don't really know how to do it. Like, here's the way to do it. So that's kind of a hard pill to swallow for sure. But like that's what the industry is about. It's about learning and can you make it faster and smaller? So if you can, great. But yeah, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it. And you can do it more than once a year. I will say that if you want to do stellar stuff, I can start showing you, we can try to find a time to like make that happen. And if there's anything that you run into, especially with projects going forward, Datastar, do reach out. Like that CSRF video, like it was a perfect example of like, we could have made that a lot smaller and simpler. And I do think that you're a great advocate for like hypermedia, and I do think that if we can't like explain it in a way then that means it's a fault of ours. Like it's our fault that we're not explaining it well enough. They're like, oh yeah, there's obviously an easier way here. So that's something that we need to work on, and if you can help us with that. So.
Yeah, I'm if I can help in any way, I mean, I'm not writing any of the difficult code. I'm not doing any of the difficult parts. So
well, the thing is, the code's usually not difficult. It's understanding people's needs. Like the thing that I laughed so hard when I saw the video where you're like, oh, there's a bug in this thing, and then you slap bin like going RC2 out. That was really funny, and I think that's where we're at right now. Is that it's all little bug fixes, but it's stuff that matters to people a lot. Like if you were in the middle of your project and you ran into that bug, you're like, oh, I'm moving back to HTMX. Like it's that kind of thing that I get the frustration, but we're there to help and we go really fast. So if you have an issue, please reach out. So.
Yeah, and I'll just pitch the Discord again. I'm not a Discord person much, but I mean, if you go on there and need help, like people are helping. It's very active and people are having fun. So
yeah, no, it's a good place.
Recommend.
Not a cult.